Is that yesterday when I arrived in Amravati, I was really looking at women and saying, oh, maybe it's her. So it was all on my mind all day in Amravati.
So what were you looking for?
The skin, because I'm very dark skinned, so the skin, the nose, the shape of your eyes, everything. Every woman in this city could be her.
So, does that mean she plans to continue the search for Suman, her birth mother?
I'm not sure. It has been a lot for me these past few days, so I really think I need to digest that before knowing if I want to continue the search.
In India, we leave it there. And it's months later when we meet in Paris that I have the chance to ask Stephanie that question again.
At this point in time, and I took a lot of time to reflect, I'm not going to continue the search. I'm good with that decision. I'm good on not having all the answers.
You were so happy to find out the name of your biological mother. Are you still curious about her?
I still have this curiosity, but it's okay to leave it like this. What I realized is that even though I didn't knew where I was born, my identity, the whole part is France. My life, my home is in France. My identity has been shaped by the people that grew up with me, my parents, basically. So I don't feel the need to unbalance my life for this search.
Unbalanced. Stephanie's desire to look for her birth mother started with her not feeling balanced. Now she clearly feels far more grounded after our trip, enough for her to put her search on indefinite hold, and to live without all the answers. It also seems our journey has cemented a profound change in her sense of identity.
I feel also that I'm belonging to India. It's not like a distant country now. I feel much more closer.
Do you describe yourself ever as Indian?
I would say French Indian now.
Does that feel good?
Yeah, it does feel good. In general, I think I want to say thank you, Tanya.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, no, definitely, because it's been the biggest journey, I would say, for me. So it's deeply emotional. Sometimes I don't have all the words to express that, but it's been amazing.
That's all from Assignment. India's Shadow Children was produced and presented by me, Tanya Datta. Linda Presley was the producer in London, and Assignment was expertly mixed by James Beard.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this...
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg, and hello, Brandon. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in Brandon, Manitoba this morning, 2 hours west of the city of Winnipeg, as you know. Manitoba's second largest city. It's our second live morning show here as we continue to focus on this community as part of our special effort to get out of the studio and get into our fellow Manitobans' lives that are not in Winnipeg. We're breaking the perimeteritis, if you will. It is, as mentioned, 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. Show's on till 8:37. Thank you for joining us for our program from the Wheat City. Today in Winnipeg, weather-wise, cloudy, and we are expecting some fog patches. That should dissipate a little later this morning, a high of 2 degrees. Here in Brandon, 30% chance of flurries this morning, but when you walk out, it feels like a nice spring day. We do have a risk of some drizzle, and we could see some fog here. Our high here in Brandon is going to be 0. So you could be listening on 89.3 FM or 97.9 FM if you're here in Brandon, or maybe you're watching us on YouTube, and if you are, you've got a special treat. We are at Forbidden Flavors on 18, so we have a special show ahead. Big thanks to manager Andrea King for being up early and letting us in and being our community studio here in Brandon this morning, just across from the Keystone Centre, which is packed with people for spring break and for the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair. Our team today, Prabjot Lote, Corey Funk on scene with us here in Brandon, Abby Adiemi and Darren Marash in the control room back in Studio 15, as well in our news department, Heather Wells, who is here at 2 minutes to 6 o'clock with our headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. paying? Well, the Manitoba government is paying a U.S. firm to help find emergency room doctors south of the border for temporary posts, largely in rural and northern communities. The province has teamed up with Utah-based Global Medical Staffing, which has put up 5 job postings in recent days. Shared Health did not reveal how much it is paying the American company, but Health Minister Uzoma Eseguera says the amount is minimal. We'll hear more. As well, the Canadian Centre for Child Protection says big tech giants have made it easier to target children. This, as Winnipeg police are warning, sextortion cases are on the rise in Winnipeg. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, in the program this morning, we're going to hear more about what's happening with one of the colleges here and with Brandon University. They have increasing enrollment of Indigenous students, and that is by no accident. We're going to find out more about some of those initiatives. But right now, World Report.
On cue, Amanda Peet's new movie tackles some hard questions around aging and relevance in the arts, something that, as an actor in her 50s, she's been thinking a lot about. And she gets really candid about something we don't talk about very often on this show, pressure to get cosmetic surgery.
What exactly am I trying to accomplish by getting a facelift?
Q with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott.
We are in this military operation, so powerful, so brilliant, against one of the most powerful countries for 32 days. And the country has been eviscerated.
U.S. President Donald Trump touting military wins in Iran, but providing few details on what the coming weeks of war will look like. In a primetime address last night, the president claimed the mission is nearly complete. But as Katie Nicholson reports, Trump's speech is inflaming critics who say there is still no clear endgame.
We are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly.
In his roughly 18-minute address, U.S. President Donald Trump tried to sell the American public on his military's wins in Iran. But Americans tuning in to find out the next steps as a third aircraft carrier and more military equipment and troops amass in the region got only this.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
No American is going to bed tonight with a more clear picture of what the end game is and when this is going to wrap up.
Democratic Representative Jason Crow, a former Army Ranger, is among many of the vocal congressional critics of this war since it began. He's also been worried by Trump's recent comments slamming NATO for not helping the U.S. in the Iranian war, especially as Trump again floated pulling the U.S. out of the decades-old treaty.
And then he goes to our allies and he says, why didn't you come and help us? Why aren't you coming to our aid? At the same time as he's actually maligning them and calling them names and threatening them.
The address came more than a month into a war which poll after poll has shown to be a deeply unpopular entanglement, still with no clear end. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Washington.
Global oil prices are surging this morning following Donald Trump's primetime address. Benchmark Brent crude jumped 6% to over $107 a barrel after the president offered no clear timeline for reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Markets had hoped for a de-escalation, and instead, the president's promise of more extreme strikes is fueling fears of a prolonged supply crisis. Gasoline prices are on the rise as the Iranian blockade continues to choke off a fifth of the world's oil supply. Canada's Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is meeting with business leaders today during his trade mission in Beijing. The goal? To find new Chinese investment and shore up relationships. Lisa Sheng has the latest from Beijing.
At the Canadian Embassy in Beijing, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is greeted by Ambassador Jennifer May. Champagne here to make Canada's presence known in a massive country.
We think that our financial institutions our insurance company, which are already present on the Chinese market, can help to further the objective that has been set by the Prime Minister.
These objectives increase exports to China by 50% by 2030 and get more Chinese investment in Canada. Part of a thaw in relations Prime Minister Mark Carney signaled when he met with President Xi Jinping in January. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem is traveling with the minister.
We talk about diversifying our trade. We need to do it.
To further that goal, Champagne and Macklem met with the heads of Canadian financial institutions who want to increase their presence in China, including CEO of Manulife, Phil Witherington.
We cannot be a global giant and depend only on 40 million customers, but by accessing mega economies such as China and India and the United States, we can be a global giant.
Tomorrow, the minister will meet with Chinese banks and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Beijing.
Health Canada is slapping new conditions on plasma donation company Grifols. We told you last month about a review of 2 deaths just 4 months apart at the company's locations in Winnipeg. Health Canada says it did a virtual inspection of Grifols' head office in Oakville, Ontario in January, and the company failed. Investigators said it wasn't accurately assessing a donor's suitability, did not thoroughly investigate errors and accidents, and didn't have enough properly trained staff. Grifols runs 16 plasma collection centers in Canada. They must now reduce their number of appointments so staff have the capacity to fully follow procedures. A Montreal-based private security firm is the winner of a contract to operate an ICE detention center in the U.S. GardaWorld received financing from the investment arm of the provincial government in 2022, and that's leading to calls for greater scrutiny over its activities outside Quebec. Ben Schingler reports.
It is just a massive empty warehouse.
Brent Peak is with Northwest Valley Indivisible, a citizens group in Arizona fighting plans to convert that warehouse in the town of Surprise into an ICE detention center. Last month, the American subsidiary of GardaWorld won the contract worth more than $300 million US to run a 1,500-bed facility providing services like medical care and processing detainees.
The idea of a company with the reputation of GardaWorld coming in here and being a part of that just makes it something even more unfit for this community.
Part of his concern comes from the company's work at what's known as Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, a state facility facing legal challenges for alleged human rights abuses. GardaWorld is not a defendant in those lawsuits, and there's no evidence of their involvement in alleged wrongdoing at Alligator Alcatraz. But corporate watchdogs in Canada say the contract should get more scrutiny here after the Quebec government's investment arm gave $300 million in financing to the company in 2022. Karen Hamilton is director of Above Ground, a Canadian human rights and corporate accountability project.
I think that there are questions that need to be asked, and I think that they need to be asked both of GardaWorld and of the Quebec government.
A spokesperson for Quebec's economy minister says the financing came with conditions, including keeping the company's headquarters in Montreal, and that the deal is not tied to its U.S. operations. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security says its new converted warehouses will meet regular detention standards. GardaWorld said its U.S. subsidiary operates independently and always with respect for human rights. Ben Schingler, CBC News, Montreal.
Ottawa is offering a new guarantee to people applying for a Canadian passport. 30 days or it's free. The federal government says most passport applications are processed within 10 to 20 business days, and applicants will get a full refund of their fee if it takes more than 30 days. That does not include mailing time. The countdown starts when the government receives a complete application. The crew of NASA's Artemis 2 mission are on their way to the moon after a successful launch last night.
3, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
This is the first crewed mission to the moon's vicinity since the Apollo program in 1972. Artemis 2 plans to surpass the Apollo mission's distance record and travel deeper into space than any humans have gone before. Senior science reporter Nicole Martellaro is tracking the Orion space capsule for us, and she joins us from Cape Canaveral, Florida. So, Nicole, you were working most of the night, and most of us were sleeping. What did we miss?
Well, the few things were going on. They were hard at work. They did a couple of engine burns that would take them on an elliptical orbit around Earth. So the orbit there'll be one that's farthest from Earth, and there'll be one that is closest to Earth. And that's basically what the engine burn does, puts them in the correct orbit as they go around Earth. The one really cool thing that they also did was they separated from the ICPS, the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion System. And that basically is what gave them the extra power, the booster. And they had to do a demonstration test where the Orion capsule, now called Integrity, did a flip and then approached and backed away from that ICPS unit in order to test the maneuverability of the spacecraft. And that would have been done by Victor Glover. And so they've been hard at work.
Well, Nicole, what are we watching for now?
Now they are going to have a couple of naps in between. As you can imagine, it's been a long day for them, long few months. And now they're going to do a translunar injection burn, and that will put them on the path to go around the moon. And this is called a free trajectory return. So they basically put it into the correct orbit and gravity takes over and they slingshot around the moon and then they'll come back. But of course, along the way, they'll be doing a lot of tests and experiments and testing out the spacecraft, but also experiments that are being conducted on themselves.
CBC senior science reporter Nicole Martellaro in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Thank you.
Thanks.
And that is the latest national and international and space news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca, including a big article with more on the Artemis launch from our Nicole Martellaro. Plus, if you missed it last night, video of the launch itself. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
About the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair here in Brandon.
As an individual that's lived in this community forever, I'm very proud that we have the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair. That is a big plus. And as far as what do I love about it is I grew up on a farm. This is very close to my heart in seeing the people, and I enjoy talking to the people as I deliver programs because they come from all over Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Ontario, and today I met people from England. Hi, my name is Pat Bauslaw, and yes, I love volunteering here, and I've probably volunteered at this fair or other things in the city for 40 years easily. You are listening to Information Radio, live from Brandon, Manitoba, on CBC Radio 1.
Well, I'll tell you what, 40 years is a long time, but the fair's been going for 120 this year, and we can attest to how busy it is because we're live in Brandon. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining our team here at Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 97.7 FM, 0.9 FM rather, here in Brandon. And across the street from us where our location is this morning, we can see the packed parking lot because the Keystone Center is right there where the fair is going on. We're at Forbidden Flavors on 18th this morning. Of course, 18th is the main street here pretty much in Brandon. Well, one of them. There's that and there's 10. But it's getting busy. It's a beautiful spring day. We're glad to be here for another special day of programming. This is our community studio. You're listening to CBC in Brandon. This hour on our broadcast, we're going to be talking about what is happening with some of the kids at the fair. You might go to a spelling bee or a science fair to show off your skills, but when you're at the winter fair here, you show off your mini horse and cart. Stay tuned. We're going to take you to the 4-H skills demonstration stage in a moment. Also, I'm so excited, and I can't visually see, so I'm not sure if you're going to see this in the shot or not, but for our radio listeners, right beside me, I literally have a painter from Brandon who's creating a work of art that we're going to give away to somebody by the end of the show. And this is someone that everyone here knows. After arriving in the city from China, he learned to paint. He fell in love with it. He's painted almost every single day since 2003, and he paints beautiful scenes, many of them of Brandon. Today, he's doing his daily painting live with us, as I mentioned, at Forbidden Flavors. So we're very excited. And coming up at 6:50 this hour, we will talk more about that, and we will talk with Weiming Zhao. And if you want to watch, please tune into our YouTube stream. It's live on CBC Manitoba. Heather Wells is here next. It's 6:12 a.m. She has your morning headlines. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Marcy. Yes, for every 100 nurses hired into Manitoba's public healthcare system, the province lost 57. That's according to provincial numbers obtained by CBC News. The data looked at hiring figures for 13 months ending in May of last year. Sonia Udod is a nursing professor at the University of Manitoba. She says the focus historically is on training and hiring more nurses, but she says it should be elsewhere, like in retention. And Health Canada has slapped new terms and conditions on all of Grifols' paid plasma centres. The company has faced scrutiny after the recent deaths of 2 donors. We're going to hear the latest on that story from our I-team coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Also, I should mention that later in the program, we're going to have more on that story. So we're just confirming, but it'll be coming up after 8 o'clock. I did have some groups that were critical of Health Canada after that, critical of Grifols after that first report came out about the concerns there. And so we're going to get some of their reaction this morning. So the Manitoba Health Coalition is going to be joining us a little bit later. I'm just checking to make sure I have their title right. Okay, let's get into the weather right now. The weather forecast for Winnipeg today is mainly cloudy, fog patches dissipating this morning and an afternoon high of 2 degrees. Here in Brandon, 30% chance we'll see some flurries this morning, risk of freezing drizzle and a high of 0. As I mentioned, a pretty crisp but very nice start to the day already. And up in Thompson, your high is once again 2 degrees with another lovely day, a mix of sun and cloud, another mild day up in Thompson. Abby Adeyemi joins us now live, and he's here with traffic. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Marcy. Just no traffic to report yet. The rush hour is not started. It's only Thursday, 6:15. So if you see anything on the road, let us know. 788-3093.
Okay, so I'm going to slide in here and let's talk a little bit, you, me, and Corey, for a moment about the traffic that we all might have seen, which is yesterday and the Artemis 2 traveling into space. Where were you, Abby, when you were watching it?
I was just right on the recline and watching it on YouTube, actually. I tapped into the NASA YouTube feed and I was just consuming everything because then you don't get all those commentaries from the TV folks. It's just going to be control room sound and the spaceship.
You wanted the pure stuff. So tell me why you watched it. Why did you care as a Canadian to tune in yesterday?
You know, this is the first time they weren't sending a robot out there. They were actually sending human beings, living things to go outside. You know, we have people go to the space center back and forth, but this is the first time in a very, very long time that human beings would actually be going outside from planet Earth and all the way traveling towards a moon. And also we have a Canadian present there. So I was really, despite the fact that the camera angles were not in my favor, I was still looking out for Jeremy. And they all looked alike, but I was like, that's Jeremy. I know him.
I know. Well, it's exciting for us because Jeremy Hansen, the Canadian astronaut aboard, was in our CBC studio in Studio 15 with us. So we were like, oh, it's Jeremy.
I showed the picture I took with him to my brother, and he's like, you know an astronaut? I'm like, yeah, I know someone going to the moon.
I remember you taking that selfie. So this is the farthest that any human being will ever have been because they will go around, of course, the moon in the Artemis 2. Corey and I also had our moments here in the hotel, actually, in Brandon. We made a point of kind of having our own little watch party. Corey, what stayed with you from watching?
I think just how little I know about how space and space travel work. All of a sudden the launch went happen, and then all of a sudden I'm watching, I'm squinting, and I saw something fall off. I'm like, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
Corey kept going, that seems bad to me. And they'd be like, that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's falling from the sky.
Okay.
I was like, I guess so. And then you kind of are squinting, like, is that the spaceship?
Yep.
I don't know. But it really is something. I mean, like right now as a toddler dad, you talk about space all the time. And from a young age, kids are obsessed with it too. My little guy is 3, and he just wants to talk about space and aliens and planets and stars. I think it touches on something like deep within all of us, you know, to be part of something bigger than ourselves and be fascinated with the outside world to explore. So I think it just touches something, part of our humanity that I think just resonates with everyone. I was captivated the whole time. The fact that there's people up there right now starting to make their way towards the moon is just wild.
And the quotes from the astronauts as well. The moment where we could hear them saying, you know, what they were saying right before they were off.
Jeremy Hansen, I think he said as they were kind of doing the check-in, I think we heard him say, a go for all humanity.
So if you want to read more about this, you can, of course, read on our website, and we'll have some analysis coming up on the news throughout the morning about where the Artemis 2 is at today. Marie's right. We're going for all humanity, the quote from Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen. Well, let's bring it back down to earth now. If you Google Coyote Creek Farm in Minnedosa, Manitoba here in Westman, you're likely going to come up with some beautiful images of chickens and sunsets and massive Clydesdale horses on a lovely family farm operation. Now, I got to meet one of the youngest members of that family farm who was at the Brandon Winter Fair showing off a much smaller member of the herd. Hi, what's your full name?
Lenny Mae Bettridge.
Nice to meet you. So we're just watching you show everybody a thing or two in the ring. Who's this?
This is Toby.
How old's Toby?
Toby is 8.
I'm a city kid, so I'm going to call Toby a miniature horse. Am I right?
You're right.
Yeah. How long have you had Toby or known Toby?
We've known Toby for 2 years now.
Yeah. And what do you do with Toby? What were you showing? What kind of skills were you showing off here at the fair?
We were demonstrating how to harness a miniature horse, and then I was driving him around in the arena.
Amazing. So tell me, are you from Brandon? Are you from the Westman area?
I am from Minnedosa.
Okay. Do you guys have an area where Toby lives with you out there then?
We do.
So how did you learn to do this, and how much of a daily part of your life is working with Toby and other animals?
Well, I learned because my parents used to drive Clydesdales actually here. So then we decided we were going to buy, well, I got a miniature when I was little. So then growing up, we got more, and we decided that we were going to start showing them. And then they taught me how to drive more often. And we have quite a few animals at home, and we tend to work with them pretty often.
Wow. Do you have what do you love about working with animals? Because it's a real gift to have an animal listen to you, allow you to harness it. I can't even get the booties on my dog.
I just love working with animals. They're my happy place. I would rather be with them than anywhere else.
How much of a part of a way of life is it out here? Because there's other kids obviously here. They're all over the place showing off their skills. How much of a part of a way of life it is for some kids in Manitoba?
I feel like some kids who don't know about horses and stuff, they can come and they can see all the demonstrations and all the jumping and classes like that, and they can just learn a bit about the animals.
Yeah. So teach us a little bit about Toby before we go here. So first of all, am I allowed to touch him, or you think he'll get upset?
You can pet him, just not his face.
Okay, so back in here, like here. Oh, he's like velvet. Look at him. See, you're so calm. My voice gets high-pitched and all the animals freak out. I have to stay calm. How tall is he? Do you know anything about his specs?
I think he's 32 inches.
Yeah. Let's have a look here, Prob. You can go down and look at Toby closer. Just be careful and check that out. So do you ride this little wagon around with Toby when you're at home? Do you ever do it just for pleasure?
I have a different horse. This is my brother's horse. I drive my horse at home. We go down the lane and out onto the road, and we'll go just for a little drive and come back for the fun of it.
Wow, I love that. Are people ever jealous when they hear you say, oh yeah, I have a horse, whatever, no big deal?
Not that I know of.
You can tell that you're from here. Do you have other friends that have horses too?
Yeah, my cousins and my friend over there.
Yeah, for sure. What do you want to do with this? Because you're learning a lot of skills, obviously, just because that's your life here. Do you want to stay working with minis or with Clydesdales like your parents, or do you think you'll stay in the way of this kind of way of life?
I just want to stay with minis. I like the minis.
And what's just last? What do they do? Are they on display? Do they compete? Tell me a little bit about what you can do with a miniature horse.
Well, we go to many fairs all over Manitoba, and we show them. We do halter, showmanship, driving. We do hunter and obstacle and all that. We tend to show them, and yeah.
Really nice to meet you, Toby, and nice to meet you too. Enjoy the rest of the fair. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
How cute. Oh, I touched his ear. Sorry, buddy. So cute. He's quiet. That is Lainey Betteridge, who was doing a harness demonstration with her mini horse at the Brandon Winter Fair. We're going to catch up with more kids who are going to teach us a thing or two about what rural life really means to them coming up. It's our special show from Brandon. We're live at Forbidden Flavors on 18th this morning, right across from the Keystone Center in downtown, not in downtown Brandon, in Brandon, different part of the city. Yesterday we were downtown. This is our second special show out here on CBC for Communities in Focus. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM or 97.9 FM. FM here in Brandon. 6:23 a.m. is the time right now, and you're about to see something beautiful if you are watching our stream on Information Radio on YouTube this morning. Coming up, we're going to talk to Wai Ming Zhao, and what you can see right now is a beautiful painting that he is doing live. I cannot believe he's done this live in the time he's been here. He hasn't even been with us for an hour here at Forbidden Flavors, and he's already created this gorgeous scene of Brandon. He paints every single day, and he's done that since 2003 when he moved here from China. Most people in this Westman city know him, and you're going to hear a little more about his story and his journey with painting, and someone's going to win this painting by the end of our program. So keep watching and listening to learn how. Right now, we're going to turn our attention to national and international news on CBC. Up next on the show, Canada's finance minister is on a trade mission in China today, actually. He's building on the improved relations established by Prime Minister Mark Carney this year. Carney visited China in January. He met with China's president. François-Philippe Champagne is meeting finance minister and government officials in Beijing today. Now, he says his visit's important because China, of course, is the world's second largest economy and Canada's second largest trading partner. So Colin Mang is here, assistant professor of economics at McMaster University, to set up what's at stake here. Good morning.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. So let's talk more about what can be accomplished here beyond what Mark Carney accomplished earlier in the year. What do you say to what the opportunity is with this visit today?
Yeah, a lot of this is about building on that January meeting. I mean, we've had very poor relations with the Chinese over the past decade. So it's about getting to know the senior officials again, building those person-to-person contacts. So that's a really important aspect of this, following up on the trade mission from January, because there are still some unresolved trade issues. Last year, Canada exported about $30 billion worth of goods to China. We imported about $90 billion worth of goods from China. So it's still an unbalanced trade relationship. Looking at ways to close that trade gap, François-Philippe Champagne, the finance minister, is going to be meeting with Chinese business officials as well as government officials to look at those kinds of trade opportunities.
When you think about the economy in China, which is dynamic, of course, many Canadians might be a little bit unaware about it. The new middle class there, the expanding Chinese cities. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the opportunities specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, over the last 40 years as China has developed, they've come a really long way. The Chinese middle class is now estimated at about 400 million people, and their living standards for middle-class Chinese are not that different from ours. This is actually one of the reasons why China has become such a major player in the electric vehicle market, because with 400 million middle-class people, that's a huge demand for cars. China graduated about 12 million university graduates last year, and that figure keeps increasing each year. So 9 out of the top 50 universities in the world are in China today. And they've really done a lot over the past 40 years to develop their service sector, to develop their finance sector. Now, they still have a long way to go. There is still a lot of rural poverty. There's also poverty among working class in the cities. But with a core middle class of about 400 million people now, that's a really large consumer base. And this is one reason why we're interested in expanding our trade to them.
There is a controversy in the news about the use of child and forced labor in China and whether Canada would be complicit by buying Chinese electric vehicles, for example. Where does that discussion stand?
Yeah, so for many years, the Chinese government has been running a modernization and secularization campaign in Xinjiang province. So what they're doing is they're forcing ethnic Uyghurs as well as other minority groups out of rural areas and into cities and factories against their will. The United Nations actually reported on this back in January, that about a couple million people per year are subject to these forced relocations. And that is a lot of people in absolute terms. Now, relative to the size of the Chinese labor force, the overall Chinese labor force is about 770 million people. So it's a very small proportion of that. And the vast majority of Chinese goods are not made with forced labor. But from our perspective here in Canada, I mean, even though the proportion that's made with forced labor is very, very small, it's not zero. And that's really important to keep in mind. A part of François-Philippe Champagne's meetings this week are to emphasize to the Chinese the importance of supply chain integrity, and that here in Canada, we will not accept goods that are made with forced labor. So we really need assurances of that supply chain integrity.
All right, Colin, thank you very much for teeing up the visit today. We'll watch what comes out of it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
That's Colin Mang on CBC, Assistant Professor in Economics at McMaster University. I'm Marcy Marcusa. As we mentioned, CBC is live in Brandon, and we cannot be here without at least getting on a couple of minutes from one of Brandon's most famous violinists. James Ennis has won 2 Grammys. He's won 11 Junos. He has been nominated for 28 Juno Awards. It's absolutely incredible, and he always proudly talks about his start in Brandon. Here's a little bit more of his performance of Caprice number 24. Off today. It's certainly showing off its art. If you're watching on YouTube, you're hearing James Ennis on the violin, and you are watching Wei Ming Zhao paint live here in Brandon with us this morning. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is the painting? And why has he been painting every day since 2003 here in this city? We're going to talk to him in the next half hour. James Ennis, of course, nominated for 2 Grammys, and in his history, 28 Juno noms, 11 wins. Incredible. Also from Brandon. Our show continues. We will dip into business news of the day as well with Phil DeMont. That's up after your CBC News for Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells. In Winnipeg at 6:30, it is -1. It's a mild start to Thursday in Winnipeg, but we're not going to get a whole lot warmer. A high today of 2, mostly cloudy with a northeast breeze. More than half the gains Manitoba is making in hiring new nurses are being lost. That is one of the findings from 13 months of hiring data ending last May and obtained by CBC News. The data shows for every 100 nurses hired into Manitoba's public health care system, 57 leave. Darlene Jackson leads the nurses union. She wants the government to make progress in adopting minimum nurse-to-patient ratios, saying it would help with retention.
If you are looking after the appropriate number of patients, providing the care you know you should be providing, good, solid, safe, quality care, then that keeps nurses in the system longer.
Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says the hiring breakdown represents a snapshot in time. The same data, she says, shows a net gain of 735 permanent nurses during that time period. Health Canada has slapped new terms and conditions on all of Grifols' paid plasma centres. That company has faced scrutiny after the recent deaths of 2 donors. Michelle Allen reports.
Multiple failed inspections, recurring systemic deficiencies, now new terms and conditions on their license to operate. Health Canada says they apply to all 16 Grifols paid plasma clinics in Canada. This comes after 2 people died in less than 4 months after giving their plasma at 2 different Grifols locations in Winnipeg. It also comes after Grifols' Canadian head office in Oakville failed its January inspection. The head office doesn't collect plasma, but oversees all 16 Canadian collection sites. Health Canada says Grifols didn't thoroughly investigate errors and accidents, that it didn't adequately screen donors, or have enough properly trained staff. So far, Health Canada says no link has been found between the deaths and plasma collection. Grifols did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Michelle Allen, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The NDP government has tapped a Utah-based firm to recruit emergency room doctors to take temporary posts in rural and northern Manitoba. Global Medical Staffing has put up 5 job postings for Manitoba in recent days. Shared Health did not reveal how much it's paying the American company, but Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says the amount is minimal. Asseguera says the temporary postings are for longer stints of between 6 months and a year.
Even if maybe a doctor that comes here through this process doesn't end up staying, but maybe they've talked to their colleagues and said, you know what, forget Toronto, forget Vancouver. I don't even know anything about Montreal, and I don't care to know it now because Manitoba is the place to go.
The government promised a policy last year to favor Canadian companies for contracts, but it does allow for exceptions. The Canadian Centre for Child Protection says changes in social media technology are contributing to a rise in sextortion cases. The centre says apps like Snapchat and Instagram have made it easier to interact with strangers. Lindsay Lobb works for the nonprofit group and says this form of online sexual exploitation can have lasting consequences for children.
This certainly can impact their mental health. It can cause increases in anxiety and fear, a lack of feeling around safety. They become a little bit paranoid and scared when they're online. And so, and we're also seeing these manifest in other trauma symptoms.
The Canadian Centre for Child Protection is asking for stronger regulations on social media. Winnipeg police say extortion cases have spiked since the pandemic in this city, mainly driven by sextortion. U.S. President Donald Trump is declaring Iran's military incapacitated.
Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their missiles are just about used up or beaten. Taken together, these actions will cripple Iran.
But the reality on the ground is far from settled. Speaking from the White House last night, Trump insisted the enemy is essentially defeated, even as he promised a new wave of heavy strikes over the next 3 weeks. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. The Pan Am Pool of South Winnipeg. Plans for a long-awaited aquatic centre in that growing area are starting to take shape. The city is looking to hire a consultant to design the facility. That pool would be built as a separate building attached to a new recreation campus in Waverly West. Councillor Janice Luke says demand is already high.
This is quite shocking, is that we've got 71,000 people that live in my ward alone. Most wards are 50 to 55,000 people. So, this is going to be a well-used facility.
The recreation campus is expected to begin construction on its first phase later this year. That phase will include a gym, fitness room, and childcare space. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
Well, maybe if folks swimming this morning, we'll have a little bit of good news there. 6:35 a.m. is the time right now. We're out in Brandon. We're live here at Forbidden Flavors on 18th. I want to thank Andrea King for getting up early. She's the manager here, and she opened the doors for us. It's our community studio today, so stay with us for lots more. I also want to mention out of that Griffel story in the news that the Manitoba Health Coalition, which is an advocacy group, had called for, in fact, an inquest into the deaths of some plate plasma donors that the CBCI team had reported here in Manitoba when this story broke early in March. I will say that we are going to have that coalition on today for a reaction to the news of what Heather was just reporting about Griffel. So stay tuned. That's coming up a little later. Quick dip into our weather here for Thursday morning, second day of a new month. Feeling a lot like the whole last month still. We're still waiting for some major warmth, but at least we're going to be above zero today. So that is in Winnipeg, a high of 2 and mainly cloudy. Fog patches dissipating this morning. Tonight, partly cloudy, low -5. Tomorrow for Good Friday, mainly sunny, high of 2. A lot of people have the day off, of course, most people. In Brandon here, we have a 30% chance we'll see some flurries this morning and a risk of freezing drizzle. Our high is 0 here in the city of Brandon, and then tonight, mainly cloudy, low -7. For Good Friday, mainly cloudy and a high of 1 degree. And up in Thompson, you are expecting a high of 2 degrees today as you continue to stay warm, and in some cases warmer than the southern Manitoba. So we're getting into April here. Hopefully things will warm up more than this soon. What's going on in the traffic situation, Abby?
Nothing to report yet, Marcy. Rush hour not picking up yet, but just those slippery spots and the potholes, look out for them. You see anything, just let me know. 788-3093.
Okay, Abby, the best line I heard, I was on this bumpy wagon ride with 2 horses at the fair this week, and I said, whoa, bumpy. And someone in the cart, because we've been talking about city versus rural life, someone in the cart yelled, not as bumpy as the potholes in the city.
I trust you. I'll take rural bumps than potholes.
Yeah, it was so funny. It was just such a good line. All right, 6:37, as I mentioned, you're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, 97.9 FM here in Brandon. And Phil DeMont is here with our business news. Good morning, Phil.
I've always found it interesting why places are named the names they are. So I always thought Brandon was named after a person. I didn't realize it was named after a station, like Brandon House.
Well, you now are stumping me, so you're putting me on the spot, and I have to just plead ignorance because I don't know what the name of the city of Brandon is about. No, I don't actually.
Apparently, it was an outpost for I think the Hudson's Bay Company, and it was on an island somewhere. I don't quite know where Brandon is, but
2 hours west of Winnipeg.
Yeah, but I'm in Halifax. But I always thought it was named after Sir Brandon of cheese or whatever. But no, it's apparently named after Brandon House.
Well, Corey's verifying your info right now. Why don't you talk about oil price? Yeah, no worries. Why don't you talk about oil prices? They jumped overnight after Donald Trump threatened more attacks against Iran, as we know. Crude prices making big moves almost every day, Phil, frankly. Is the market, in your view, totally, driven by speculators now? Where are we at?
I would say by speculation, but not speculators. The problem, Marcy, is the movements are so large that the normal corporate planning processes aren't working. So you look at last night, Wednesday night, Donald Trump talks, the prices for both WTI, West Texas Intermediate, and Brent crude oil jumped more than $8 or 8%. They're now both about $110 US. Same oil, though, fell $10, more than $10 in a day, after March 30th. Traders they're used to the volatility, but not in such a short span. So it makes the usual ways they protect against these big movements way trickier. So earlier in the year, there was a surge in the sale of future contracts for oil. So you kind of buy it at a future price, even though you don't have it, that kind of an idea. And it's one way you protect yourself against big price jumps. But then the price fell really a lot. So you can sell those options, buy other ones at the lower price, but it costs you money. So they're kind of doing this stuff, but it's bouncing every day, so they don't quite know what to do. So they're making guesses, and that's a trick. Here's something that has disappeared. West Texas Intermediate, the North American price, usually trades at a lower price than Brent crude for a bunch of reasons. The difference had hit about $20 U.S. when the Iran-U.S. war started. Now it's $1. And the reason it's disappeared, U.S. petroleum exports have hit record levels. So American producers found out they can make more money selling the oil they're producing to other countries at the higher price. Kind of why gasoline prices in the U.S. will stay high no matter how much the U.S. produces as long as this conflict continues.
Okay, and since we've been talking, Corey wants to dive in because he's verifying the name of Brandon.
Yes, so the city actually got its name. So this is you're right.
According
there,
to where?
It's layered. So this is from the history of the city of Brandon on their website.
Okay.
So it got its name from the Blue Hills that are south of the city, which got their name from a Hudson's Bay trading post known as Brandon House, which got its name from a hill on an island on James Bay. So it was like someone went to James Bay, they liked the name. They came to this area of Manitoba.
Okay.
We're like, I'll name it after a place that I like. The hills maybe kind of look like it, kind of thing.
And in case you're wondering what it sounds like when you open a can of worms on the radio, that's it.
I'm sorry I did that.
Thanks, you two.
I'm looking forward to the emails after
Don't be sorry. If we get emails from folks in Brandon, we've achieved our programming goals. This is our community studio this morning.
That's true.
You want to talk about Pokemon before you go, making sure your pizza gets to you on time?
Yeah, it's about robotics. Delivery robots are becoming obviously increasingly popular in urban settings. Last week, I was in Japan, and that's just me bragging, but when I went to get on the elevator in my hotel, I had to let off a 3-foot delivery robot first. It was really weird because the robot was the only thing there. I don't know how to press the buttons, but it kind of zipped off. So this type of vehicles, they're popular, but they have a problem. They use GPS to find out where they're going, and that's unreliable in big cities. Enter Pokemon Go. It's an older game, but it's where players use their phones, walk around the cities, and capture characters in the Pokemon game geographically. So Niantic, which is a Google spinoff, has trained its robots by using the 30 billion images from the phones of Pokemon Go participants. Then the robot can figure out where it is by comparing the same location with different images. So, here it is in the snow, or here it doesn't get confused as much when you're trying to deliver your pizza. Considering I couldn't figure out how to use the Do Not Disturb button on my phone, technology is an issue for me, but at least now I won't get run over by a robot the next time it comes charging off an elevator at me.
Nice image. And yes, we're jealous you were in Japan. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
That's Phil DeMont with our business news. Well, you've already heard this morning on World Report, on our business news this morning, of course, and even on our local news, a lot of people talking about Trump's address last night. And so we're going to give you some analysis of that coming up next. With the United States at war with Iran and gas prices soaring, U.S. President Donald Trump used a primetime address last night to give his take on the situation. Here's a bit of what he said.
We've beaten and completely decimated Iran. They are decimated, both militarily and economically and in every other way. And the countries of the world that do receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage. They must cherish it. They must grab it and cherish it. They can do it easily. We will be helpful, but they should take the lead in protecting the oil that they so desperately depend on.
Trump also said the U.S. military will continue to hit Iran, quote, extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks, end quote, and offered the same timeline for the conclusion of the war. For more, Thomas Schaller is with us, a professor of political science at the University of Maryland. Good morning.
Morning, Marcy. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm not sure what he said last night. Or, I think a lot of people were leaning in waiting to hear things that he didn't say. What stood out from you?
I mean, there was nothing new. It was just a regurgitation of all his Truth Social media posts. It was 19 minutes of contradictions. He says he built the world's greatest military in his first term, and it would be easy to retake the Strait of Hormuz, but we're not going to do it, and he expects our European allies to do it. He says they've been completely decimated, but, last June, the White House put out a banner ad on the White House website saying that, their nuclear capabilities have been obliterated, so now they have to be re-obliterated. They want that 400 kilograms of enriched uranium that Iran has buried underground, but he said, we don't really need it, and it's buried anyway, so it's useless. So it's not clear what the objectives are. It's not clear what the extra strategy is. And Trump says we have all the oil domestically produced here that we need, but that doesn't explain why the price of gas at the pump has gone from $3 to $4. So it was just riddled with contradictions. There was no new signals about what we're going to do. And, Trump just said, well, the Strait of Hormuz is just going to open up all by itself, just like he said the COVID virus would just float away one day. And so he doesn't seem to have any solutions. He knows that his numbers are tanking. He knows that people aren't happy about the price of gas at the pump, and the markets are down. And he said, well, the last 2 days they went up. Well, sure, but they're down 4 to 5% year to date since January 1st. And Trump, whatever else he does pay attention to the stock market, and he does pay attention to the price of gas, which he was just bragging about 6 weeks ago in his State of the Union address, and now it's at $4 a gallon.
So he also repeated, Thomas, his urging of other countries to get involved in the Strait of Hormuz. How likely is that?
I don't know. I guess the European heads of state are going to have a conference call today and start to talk about what kind of strategies they can enact collectively, because it's not clear what the U.S. is going to do. But like I said, it's such a contradiction. If he said it could be open so easily and we have the world's most powerful military, then we should be able to do it easily. We would need our allies. And, him saying you should cherish that oil and they go in and do it is an admission that Trump does not want to send our U.S. Navy in there. He doesn't want to risk somebody, the strait is so narrow, you could probably fire a shoulder-fired missile onto U.S. carriers or U.S. battleships and take American lives. And he mentioned going to Dover, which is the Air Force Base in Delaware, where troops come back in flag-draped coffins. And he said every single parent and surviving spouse said, finish the job and that they're all behind us. But he doesn't want to be seen welcoming home dead service personnel. And we know that the country is not behind that at all. 66% oppose the war, about 2 to 1 against him, and more than 70% do not want us to send troops into the area. So if it was really so easy, when we have the world's best military, it should be really easy for the United States to go in there and reassert itself in the strait. And Trump doesn't want to do it.
What are you watching for in the coming days and weeks? I mean, besides what I think the world's watching for, which is some kind of clarity. And I know Americans have been watching for exactly what he's doing there. And none of that, as you started by saying, came last night. So what are you going to be specifically, what are you maybe not watching for? What are you thinking he needs to say or should say to allow the world to understand where things are going next, if that's even possible?
Well, Trump keeps signaling that there's negotiations between Washington and Tehran, but every time he says that, and maybe Iran's lying here, let's be clear. They say we're not familiar with these negotiations. We don't know. There haven't been any offers. There's not any discussions. And they're making it look like Trump is negotiating with himself, which, given the 19 minutes on TV last night, it does look like he's negotiating with himself over a war that he wishes he hadn't started and has no plan to end, and no clear exit strategy. So I don't know what the world is looking for in terms of signals. I think mostly what the oil markets and the global markets are worried about is the strait, and they're looking for a plan to get that reopened. And Trump continues to pass the buck here. He's kind of like a petulant little child who's been told by parents, stop playing ball in the house, you're going to break something. And then sure enough, he knocks over the cherished family vase, and it's shattered in pieces. And he's either telling us, A, it's not broken, or B, it is broken, but it's not his fault, and C, somebody else needs to come in and sweep that up because he has nothing to do with it. And so, that's what the vase is, the Strait of Hormuz, and Trump has no plan for how to reopen it. And it's very clear when he's begging our allies that he's been insulting for a decade that they need to do it, and it's in their best interest when it's really in Trump and America's best interest.
As far as pulling an analogy, wow, I think you win for the morning. Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate you being on today.
All right, cheers. Thank you.
That is Thomas Schaller with his perspective on the Trump speech last night. The U.S. president delivered in prime time that speech. We'll get more analysis from journalists and other perspectives on what Trump said. That's coming up at 7. Schaller is a professor of political science at University of Maryland.
I'm Suresh Das. I've spent my career writing about the local favorites that make Canada's food scene truly unique. I bit into it chili. Woo! From vibrant street food to comforting traditional dishes.
The most important ingredients in jollof rice, love.
To innovative, personal twists. Butter chicken lasagna.
Butter chicken lasagna. Yeah. That's what made it all happen.
I believe every bite tells a story. Now, I want to share those stories with you.
New series Locals Welcome with Suresh Das. Watch free on CBC Gem.
It is 11 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is a special edition of CBC. Our community studio is Forbidden Flavors on 18th Coffee Shop here in Brandon, Manitoba. It's our second day broadcasting live from Brandon. So we've moved from the heart of downtown Brandon. Today we're right across from Keystone Center, and we're so pleased to be here in the community. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Well, whether it's reading or stretching or eating well, at some point in your life, you've probably committed to doing something every day. How long did you last? A week, a month, a year? My next guest is on a 23-year streak. Almost every day since 2003, Wei-Ming Zhao has painted a picture, often of places here in Brandon, done a painting. Today he's painting his image with us here at Forbidden Flavors. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's so such a pleasure to meet you. People in Brandon talk about your work and your paintings everywhere we've been.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah. So tell me before we get into how you got into this, describe what you're painting today. What's this image of?
Normally I don't paint indoor. Like, I don't use a photo as a reference.
Okay.
But today is kind of special occasion. I can't step outside. I would love to step outside.
Because you like to be outside.
Yeah, I would like to paint directly from life. But today I just pick up the image from internet.
Yeah.
So it's showcasing a scene in, I think it's in Dinsdale Park in Brandon.
Okay.
It's probably people are winding down in the evening, in the summertime. So there's a few guys fishing there, right?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
With a downtown skyline, like a McKinsey building in the backdrop.
So you have on your easel behind us here, you have your iPad up of the image that you described, and you're painting this live through the show, like literally started incredibly, because you already look like you're done to me, but you started at 5 o'clock this morning or 6 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
By the end of the show, we're going to give this away, by the way, this beautiful scene of Western Manitoba.
Yeah.
Why do you, how did you get started in doing this in Brandon?
That's a long story. I mean, I started... Actually, I have an exact day I decided to do that. I think it's 2003, November, on the Remembrance Day. I think maybe because I incidentally pick up that day so that I will never forget. Remembrance Day. Nothing to do with painting, but somehow I decided to do something. So I just stepped outside and driving around in Brandon downtown area and sketching, all the historical buildings. So I thought maybe I should do it every day. I will see how long it will last. So then, after a year, I ended up with 500 pencil sketches.
Wow.
All done on locations in Brandon. So then I thought, oh, that's good. I should carry on. So I started with painting every day. And that really got me going for a long stretch of time. But not realizing that the whole project would carry me on for more than 2 decades.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
What do you feel like when you paint? You started it, I understand. When you think about your time back there, you'd moved from China way back then. You were a teaching assistant. I understand at first it was for, decompression and, why do you do it now?
Well, now I'm retired. I have a lot of reason to do that. I have lots of, time. And as you are getting older, you want something more engaging other than job and career, right?
Yeah.
It's not even for making money anymore. It's just for something you keep you going.
Yeah, for sure.
So you don't feel that old.
Yeah.
I'm 66 pretty soon.
Yeah. Are you
right?
are you working with is it oil painting?
It's oil.
Oil,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. How do you do it so quickly? I mean, just incredible. You've almost completed this image here.
I think the reason is I always paint en plein air. En plein air is simply a French phrase, means in the open air. That means you, instead of painting using photo as a reference in your studio, you take your easel outside and pick a scene and to look at what you see and translate what you see onto a piece of canvas in one section. The reason is you have to be quick and fast.
Got it.
Because light change.
So you sort of almost, that's your part of your process is to do it quickly.
When you see something in front of you, after a matter of 2 hours,
amazing.
Everything changed.
How many have you painted? How many paintings, and where are they all?
I probably have more than 7,000 down now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you keep them?
Well, I kept most of them in my basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have this great photo of you that people might be seeing because our videographer, our photojournalist rather, Prabjot Lote, went to your home and he has a picture of you sort of lying among the paintings with light streaming in on your face. It's just an amazing photo.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about Brandon, though, because obviously we're in your city. What are some of your favorite places to paint in Brandon?
Well, I really enjoy painting downtown area because there's a history, there's a story, there's a kind of a sense of a community there. That's also the part of the Brandon I get to know the very first when I moved to Brandon direct from China in 1991 in early summer. So I stayed on an apartment right close to downtown area.
So you still have a sort of an affinity for the area?
Yes, always connect to my earliest part of my memory of moving to Brandon.
A lot of newcomers get their start in smaller communities, and then they go to bigger cities for more opportunity. Why did you stay here?
Exactly. I mean, I never thought I would put down my root here, right? I never thought I would stay in Brandon forever. When I first came to Brandon, it's just for university, That's the very reason I found myself in Brandon. Because when I got accepted by Brandon University, I had no idea where Brandon was. Look, really, I mean, in early 90s, in China, you couldn't find a map of Canada, right? Wow. So when I got a letter of acceptance from BU, I have no idea where it is. Good thing I got a map of United States. So right above, there's a strip of Canada showing U.S. map, right? Then I thought, right above North Dakota. That's continental climate. I have to go to the local library, get a Chinese version of Encyclopedia Britannica.
To figure out where you were going.
To check out the entry about Brandon, because literally there's no information.
Can you even imagine?
Yeah, so then I thought, it would be cold in the winter and hot and dry in summer. So then I prepared to get myself to face what kind of a place I will landed myself
Amazing story.
so,
in all ways.
Yeah, and I fell in love with Brandon right away.
I'm so glad you're with us for the whole morning. We'll be able to talk a little more. I'm going to let you go back and continue painting.
Sure.
What a pleasure to have you live on CBC with us.
Thank you very much for having me here.
That is Weibeng Zhao, a local painter in Brandon, paints every day. Now does commissions for people because they know him so well here around Brandon. And he's painting for you today. Someone's going to win this beautiful painting that he's making of Brandon. So what you have to do is email win@cbc.ca, and you have to tell us, in the subject line, put Westman. We want you to tell us where you think the most beautiful place in Western Manitoba is. Where's the most beautiful place in Westman? Win@cbc.ca. We'll give this painting away. By the end of the show, you have till 8 o'clock to submit. Heather Wells is here with headlines.
Well, the Manitoba government is paying a U.S. firm to help find emergency room doctors south of the border for temporary posts, largely in rural and northern communities. Shared Health did not reveal how much it is paying the American company. We'll hear more on that story and other news from Manitoba coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
We also have World Report coming up here. We can tell you that right now in Winnipeg, we're sitting at right around, just checking here, -1. Brandon here is at -2. Thompson's at -12. We're all going to be right about to just 2 degrees today, around just above zero. Stay tuned. Our show from Brandon continues after 7 o'clock. World Report is coming up next.
Today on The Current.
Listen, do you want to go out Friday? Yeah? Sure. Okay.
Andrew McCarthy was a movie star in the 1980s. Now he is a writer, and he's traveling the United States speaking with men about friendships with other men, talking about why everyone from oil rig workers to record store owners often find those friendships difficult. Coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm John Northcott.
Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten.
Donald Trump may be declaring the Iranian military incapacitated, but the reality on the ground is far from settled. Speaking from the White House last night, the U.S. president insisted the enemy is essentially defeated. But he also promised a new wave of heavy strikes over the next 3 weeks. Megan Williams has more from Dubai, where those threats are triggering fresh alarms and a sharp spike in the price of oil.
In a televised speech, Trump recycled past statements and social media posts, insisting U.S. forces are close to meeting their objectives in Iran, even as he promised another wave of heavy strikes.
Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
Iran pushed back fast. Its president said the Americans and Israelis have poor intelligence about the country's strategic capabilities and insisted Iran's missiles and long-range drones have been far from wiped out. Markets reacted quickly to Trump's speech. Oil jumped more than 6% and the dollar rose, with Asian stocks dropping. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning called for an immediate halt to military operations and a return to talks, warning the conflict is threatening both the global economy and energy security. In the Gulf, Bahrain issued fresh alerts this morning. And here in Dubai, warning alarms of attacks rang out during Trump's speech, with thundering fighter jets and booms heard last night and this morning. Megan Williams, CBC News, Dubai.
Britain is convening a meeting of 35 countries, including Canada, to find a way to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the talks are aimed at restoring the movement of oil and gas. But notably, the United States is not invited. Donald Trump is still vowing to keep hitting Iran, but Starmer is warning even after the fighting stops, it will be a long and difficult process to make the strait safe for shipping. One of Canada's leading economic think tanks is urging Ottawa to develop a credible fiscal plan to prepare for higher defense spending. Canada's reached the 2% NATO target, but the C.D. Howe Institute says hitting the alliance's next benchmark will require massive trade-offs. As Murray Brewster reports, a new study looks at what Canadians will have to sacrifice to pay the bill.
The best time to have this conversation is now.
because the credibility of this fiscal plan is extremely important.
Colin Busby of the C.D. Howe Institute, which is urging the federal government to put its cards on the table. With all of the political celebration of achieving NATO's 2% target behind us, the Institute says it's incumbent on Prime Minister Mark Carney's government to spell out how it will meet the alliance's next benchmark of 5% of GDP. Where's the money going to come from?
This is going to really change the way how dollars and cents are allocated in Ottawa.
Hitting NATO's new goal could cost the federal treasury as much as $150 billion a year. Just for comparison's sake, in the budget year that's just ended, the federal government provided $99.4 billion in health and education transfers to the provinces and territories. The C.D. Howe report recommends a modest increase in the GST and the restraining of growth of non-defense spending and provincial transfers as a way to close the budget gap. Busby says how to pay for the 5% goal is a concern right across NATO.
I'm concerned about not just Canada, but other countries as well, putting off this question and debt financing this entire increase. And then you can see an assortment of NATO countries that are in fiscal trouble and facing major fiscal challenges.
For his part, the Prime Minister acknowledged last year higher defense spending will mean trade-offs, but later in the decade. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Emergency crews in the Odessa region are on the scene of a major port fire this morning. Video released by Ukraine's State Emergency Service shows firefighters dousing the flames burning through rows of shipping containers. Russian drones hit early today, just as Ukraine was calling for a humanitarian ceasefire to mark the Easter weekend. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he proposed a truce, but Moscow's response was a wave of more than 300 drones launched at targets across the country. Canada's Finance Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, is hosting business leaders of at the Canadian Embassy in Beijing, part of the trade mission aimed at increasing exports to China by 50% by the year 2030 and drumming up more Chinese investment in Canada.
We think that our financial institutions, our insurance company, which are already present on the Chinese market, can help to further the objective that has been set by the Prime Minister.
Canadian financial institutions who want to boost their presence in China made their case at a roundtable. Banque Nationale, Sun Life, and Manulife all took part. Well, today marks 1 year since Donald Trump imposed his global tariffs. Since then, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled they are illegal. But the Trump administration is looking for new avenues to keep imposing the fees. And there's another class of tariffs still affecting Canadian steel and aluminum. Well, that's why Ontario Premier Doug Ford is in Texas making the case to buy Canadian. He says it could result in hundreds of millions of dollars in investment. Ford spoke to the CBC's Lorenda Redekop last night in Dallas.
We're seeing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of commitment to open up.
Premier Doug Ford says he's hopeful his trip to Texas will result in thousands of jobs coming to Ontario.
This would not be possible unless you come down, you look at them square in the eyes as Premier, and tell them you'll get the white glove treatment.
Meantime, Ontario opposition parties are criticizing the trip, saying Ford shouldn't have left now and so soon after a long legislative break. Ford is also continuing his anti-tariff message south of the border.
Yeah, we appreciate the message that the Premier is sharing.
Jeff Kittner is CEO of the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce.
Dallas is a true gateway city for international and global commerce. Trade is central to how we compete internationally.
This comes as the July 1st deadline is looming for a review of CUSMA, the Canada-U.S.-Mexico free trade deal. Ford is just the latest premier to visit Texas recently. In late March, a delegation, including 3 other Canadian premiers, traveled to the state, trying to sell, among other things, Canadian oil and resources. Earlier indications that Ford could have met with the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, a Trump ally and tariff supporter, seem to have faded.
Not as far as I know, but I know he's a very busy person.
His trip wraps up in Austin, the state capital, later today. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Dallas, Texas.
The Artemis 2 mission is circling the Earth after blasting into space from the Kennedy Space Center last night in Florida.
3, 2, 1, lift off!
People at the University of Toronto cheer on the successful launch. One of our fellow Canadians is on board. Jeremy Hansen, part of the 4-astronaut crew. For nearly 10 days, Hansen and his team will work, sleep, and eat together in the close quarters of NASA's new Orion capsule. The CBC's Nick Logan takes us inside the state-of-the-art spacecraft.
Boosters in ignition. And liftoff.
The crew of the Artemis 2 mission will travel more than 1 million kilometers around the moon and back to Earth in the Orion capsule.
So it's more like a road trip in a minivan.
David St. Jacques is with the Canadian Space Agency. He spent 204 days on the International Space Station.
The space station is huge. It's the size of 5-6 school buses.
Orion is just 5.5 meters at its widest and 3.3 meters high.
When you're in 0G, it will feel bigger than what it looks like.
This is Orion's first human test flight.
Science is our toolbox for survival.
NASA's chief exploration scientist, Chris Bleacher, in January.
During this flight, we will learn how the spacecraft behaves. We will also learn how we, human beings, behave in that same environment.
It's not just where they'll work.
We'll all string a sleeping bag up more like you would string up a hammock.
That's Jeremy Hansen giving a video tour of Orion's living space.
Right now, let's think of it as our kitchen.
The only privacy.
So here you can see the toilet.
The Orion crew has been preparing since 2023, and that included doing something most astronauts don't get the opportunity to do.
The fact that they were able to participate in the design of the mission and the design of the spacecraft is a huge privilege.
Once they're back on Earth, work begins on the next phases of Artemis, eventually putting humans back on the surface of the moon and deeper into space. Nick Logan, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, news anytime, our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Don't worry, I'm not going to take your food. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Coming up, when you find yourself at the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair in Brandon, sometimes you find yourself literally in the middle of the action in the hay. I'm a city kid. I think everything here is exciting, but coming up, we're going to meet some kids from Westman who made their life in rural Manitoba, and they're going to teach us a thing or two about farm life. Stay tuned. So coming up live from Brandon, we are going to hear more about what I just mentioned there. That was me at the fair talking to some of the young people. Getting ready to talk to some of the young people, kind of talking to a cow there. And we're broadcasting live from Brandon. This is day 2, our special community studio, information radio on the road. Today we're at Forbidden Flavors on 18th. Yesterday we were at a downtown cafe. We've moved right across from the Keystone Center, so we'll have that story coming up for you. Also coming up on the program, as Manitoba continues to be a hotspot for measles in this country, the health minister says they are not contemplating a mandatory vaccination order, but an infectious disease specialist will join us to tell us how we can bridge the gap when it comes to vaccine hesitancy.
It is true that information with a physician can oftentimes be very helpful in persuading a parent to have their child vaccinated, but there are many where that is not going to work.
We'll have more as we have that conversation with that expert just before 8 o'clock. So stay tuned. I'm Marcy Marcusa, as mentioned, with our team on the road in Brandon. Heather Wells, though, is back in our studio, in the newsroom, rather, at by Studio 15 in Winnipeg. And she's here with our headlines today. Good morning.
Good morning. More than half of the gains Manitoba is making in hiring new nurses are being lost. That is one of the findings from 13 months of hiring data ending last May and obtained by CBC News. It shows for every 100 nurses hired into Manitoba's public health care system, 57 leave. We'll hear more. Health Canada has slapped new terms and conditions on all of Grifols' paid plasma centres. That company has faced scrutiny after the recent deaths of 2 donors. More on that story as well from our I-Team coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into the weather here. I'm looking out the window at Forbidden Flavors, and it's looking pretty cloudy. In fact, it might even be a little bit foggy here in Brandon. That is certainly in our forecast. So we have in the forecast some fog possible for Winnipeg and for Brandon. Let's start in Brandon. Cloudy, 30% chance of flurries. As I mentioned, risk of freezing drizzle, some fog patches this morning. So it could be a little bit sketchy out there. Let us know how your drive's going. Call Abby. A high of 0 today in Brandon. Over in Winnipeg, mainly cloudy. Fog patches as well. Should dissipate this morning if you're seeing them as well, and a high of 2 degrees, so it's going to be a little bit milder than we've had, just a tiny bit. In Winnipeg right now, it's -1. In Thompson right now, mainly sunny, -13. And here in Brandon, our current temperature is -2, and you're listing on 97.9 FM. All right, Abby, are you hearing anything on the traffic line?
The traffic lines are kind of quiet this morning. I guess the commuters are just doing the regular maneuver of knowing where the trouble spots are. But if you see anything out there, you want us to know about it, give us a call, 788-3093.
Well, on our show yesterday from Brandon, more than one person brought up crime downtown as an issue. CBC's Corey Funk spoke to a local listener named Colleen Nickel, who joined us at Chez Angela yesterday, which is a different cafe than we're at this morning. As I mentioned, we were downtown. She says she gets everywhere on foot, but...
And I'll be honest, I've kind of quit walking at night just because of the crime, and I used to find an excuse to walk to anywhere, and I think, maybe not. I guess that's everywhere, though.
I mean, we do have the mayor just across the room here, but what would you like to see to make the city more walkable?
They've taken steps, though. They've got police cruising around downtown and stuff like that. So I think they're aware of it.
So safety is your biggest concern more than infrastructure?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I've had quite a few break-ins. I live in the core area, so I've had a home invasion and several break-ins, and it gets scary. I grew up in the day when you didn't even have to lock your door, so...
So you feel like Brandon is maybe not as safe as it once was?
Oh, for sure it's not, but I don't think anywhere is.
So that was Colleen Nickel on our show from Brandon yesterday, one of the local listeners who came to share her thoughts about the city. And yes, the mayor was there as well yesterday talking about all kinds of things. But after we got off the air, we also contacted the police chief, and we sent CBC's Corey Funk to speak with him.
Well, I am here in downtown Brandon with Brandon Police Chief Tyler Bates. He took up the post about 1.5 years or so ago, and since then he's been working to develop a downtown safety strategy, which includes adding more cadets and foot patrol. And he's here with me now. Hi there.
Hi there. Good day. How are you today?
Good. So let's just start with those new cadets. Particularly for downtown. What difference has that made?
Right. So our Brandon Cadet program has seen some expansion and came to fruition about 2 years ago, and we increased the complement from 10 to 14 this past summer. So we've seen some tremendous benefit with respect to police visibility, community engagement, and really just early intervention and the opportunity to deal with things in the downtown district that are early enough that they don't escalate to situations that might cause public safety concern. What we've seen is significant reductions in terms of, for example, property crime. Last year, we had 92 break-and enters, for example, in the downtown district. This year, we've seen a 46% reduction in that number. Right, so we had calls for service for break-and enters and mischief, or vandalism, if you will. 236 of those calls last year, only 160 in 2025, so a 32% reduction in terms of property calls for service. So that's an indicator that we're on the right track, that the efforts that we're making collectively in the community are enhancing the safety and the well-being of our downtown district.
And what is it about downtown? Like, what are the unique challenges that make safety such a concern for that area?
What I would say is that with respect to services, we have many services in the downtown district that provide support to a vulnerable population. Right, we have over 200 people that are chronically homeless in the city of Brandon, sadly, and there's a lot of services downtown that provide support for those individuals. Right, whether it be counseling services, whether it be medical services, or whether it be our safe and warm shelter, where we have a number of beds through Samaritan's House to provide shelter for people that don't have a place to lay their head at night. So when we're talking about that vulnerable population, sometimes whether it be through just perspective or otherwise, there are concerns with respect to the general population and the public in terms of their safety and well-being in the midst of that downtown sphere, right? So it's important that we have a balanced approach, right? That we provide support and care for people in those vulnerable situations, but we also provide a presence and a police visibility that makes sure that people have a self-assurance about their well-being and safety in the downtown district.
So we were actually, Angela, we were talking about downtown, about safety. There was a woman who came on, an elderly woman, who said, she avoids kind of downtown in general. She feels that, it's unsafe. She lives not far away in general. She had a couple break-ins, even a home invasion, and she has a sense that, Brandon isn't very safe. Well, what's your message to folks who, have concerns about safety, even avoid certain areas of Brandon because of their concerns around safety?
I would say historically there might have been valid concern with respect to the safety and the well-being of the downtown, but as I spoken about earlier, from a statistical metric standpoint, it doesn't bear that out. So for example, last year we had 39 break-and enters in the commercial district of Brandon. That's in 2024, and a 77% reduction in commercial break-and enters downtown. Only 8 break-and enters over the course of 2025. So we're definitely seeing a change in terms of that dialogue. The supports that are provided to a vulnerable population are increasing within the city of Brandon. As far as safe spaces where people can stay warm. Where maybe, as I've indicated, they don't have their own lodging. The interagency communities, the social services have rallied to provide that level of support and care for the vulnerable, such that I think the composition of downtown is dramatically changing. Our presence is greater than ever downtown. So you can see right behind us our downtown community cadet office. We're also in the process of moving our community support office to be jointly with the downtown biz, and and partnering in operating within that same office space, again, just so that we can increase that footprint and make sure that sense of concern, that anxiety in terms of being in that downtown space, that's a thing of the past, and that we continue to alleviate that we provide that assurance, that presence, that accessibility, so that we can deal with those particular perceptions that I think are certainly changing and are certainly improving as far as the well-being of the downtown district.
Well, Chief Bates, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
That is Brandon's police chief, Tyler Bates, fairly new still in this city, been in his role for a year and a half already, as you heard in his conversation there with CBC's Corey Funk, implementing a number of changes. If you live in this city and you have reaction to what your police chief had to share on CBC, you can always write to us at radio893@cbc.ca, and please check out our new landing page for Westman CBC. We have 2 reporters who cover Brandon, and one of them actually is going to be here with a story for you live at Forbidden Flavors on 18th. We're broadcasting live from Brandon, and her story's coming up in the next half hour. It's all about Indigenous education and how students actually are increasing in number, Indigenous students specifically, and not only one, but a number of the different post-secondary institutions here in Brandon. And we're going to find out more about the numbers and why that has been a strategic direction for these post-secondary institutions. Next, as we continue our special coverage from Westman and from the Wheat City, as we've been sharing, the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair continues. It's huge. I'm looking actually across the street out Forbidden Flavors. We can look at Keystone Center and see how much it sprawls. The Keystone Center is 540,000 square feet. If you have not been there, there are multiple arenas, show rings, meeting rooms, amphitheaters. You open a door and some other huge space opens up. There's corn dogs and super dogs, sequins and booths selling cowboy hats and tiny cowboy boots. There's t-shirts that say things like Cattle Queen and a lot of animals. Many of them are in rows of stables in the basement level at Keystone Center. Separated by metal gates, there's big fans blowing loudly to keep them all cool. You'll find mini horses and Clydesdales. ponies with their manes painted pink, huge angry bulls, and docile milky cows. It is quite an undertaking for families and groups to bring their animals here to the fair for show. But it's all part of celebrating the agricultural way of life. This is one of the largest celebrations of its kind and events and fairs of its kind in Western Manitoba, and it's been around in our province for 120 years. Let's continue now with more coverage from the fair.
Well, I mentioned that we were going to meet some of the young people in Western Manitoba that are going to teach us all about animals because it's really their way of life. Some of them are here with their families and animals from their family farms. Others are here through 4-H, like Bryn Stepler, who's from Miami, Manitoba. Hi, Bryn.
Hi.
Okay, so 4-H, what are the H's?
Hands, heart, head, and health.
Okay, how long have you been part of it? You're 13 now.
I've been a part of 4-H for 7 years now.
What does it do for you as a young person in this part of Manitoba? What does it help you with?
I get to meet a lot of great people. The friendships that you make in 4-H are incredible. And yeah, you get to meet a lot of new people. Yeah.
Are the animals behind you yours? Introduce us to these guys here. Maybe Prob can walk by you and have a look. We'll get out of his way.
So this one here, the black one, is my Simmental. And then the red one lying down is my brother's red Simmental. And the one beside her, the black one, is my other brother's Black Angus.
And do these guys have names?
Yes, so this one's Image, but we call her Emmy. Yeah. This one is Darlin, and this one's Annie K.
Okay, and how old are these guys?
So they are about a year old now, and then they'll get bred right about now.
Okay, so tell me a bit about, you're here with your family then, or with your 4-H club, or a bit of both?
I am here with my family, but the people beside us are in our 4-H club, and there's lots of people here that are in our 4-H club as well.
There's also a lot of people that aren't, because what's very cool, if you've never been to the fair before, is a lot of the young people that work with their animals are right now down taking a lesson, because part of what the fair is about is teaching, and they're learning how to prep their animals for show and such.
Yeah. And
so it's super interesting, and a lot of the kids are down learning that. What's it like being part of a farm family in Miami? What's your family's farm like?
It's great. I love being a part of it. We get to work every day with the animals, and yeah, it's great working with my family.
How hard of a life is it?
It's hard, but it's great. I love it. I love working with the animals, and I love working with my family.
What's the commitment to your animals, these guys that we just met, the one that's yours here? What does that actually mean? Because I mean, I'm thinking about people who have, I've never had is it a heifer? Did I get that right at least?
Yeah.
I've never had a heifer. What does it mean to take care of it, of the heifer?
It's a lot of work. Every day we are rinsing her, we are washing her, we are breaking her. She needs to be able to lead. She is washed every day, rinsed, groomed. She has a great life.
What's her personality like?
She is amazing. She does have a little bit of sass, but they all have their own personality.
Yeah. So tell me a story that illustrates that, or one you remember, a fave story of time with her, even if it's a quiet one.
Well, whenever we're leading, she will always want to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of jump, a little bit of run, but she's all good. She's gentle. She's good. Yeah.
What do you want to do with your future? So you're 13. You're obviously learning all these skills in 4-H. Growing up on the farm. Do you see yourself? Agriculture is such a big part of our Manitoba economy. Do you see yourself being part of that future, or too young to say?
I definitely am probably going to do something in agriculture. Maybe take over the family farm, but definitely something in agriculture.
What draws you to that? Because as you know, it's a hard way of life, and it can be unpredictable, but obviously, and maybe even unstable, but it's necessary. It's what feeds us.
Yeah, mostly the community and the relationships that you get in this industry. The cattle industry is great. Yeah.
Will she respond to you if you go give her a pat? Does she know you?
Yeah, kind of. She'll kind of probably just stand there.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if she'll say hello. You never know, folks. Hello. 4-H is on stage at the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair all week. Thank you, Bryn.
Yeah, thank you.
You can check out them here as well in their various different stables. We are in the basement of the Keystone Centre. I'm Marcy Marcusa for CBC News in Brandon.
So that's obviously me doing a report sign-off for our YouTube stream. You probably saw the animals there if you're watching the show too today. Bryn Stepler is who I met there. Her family farms 650 head of cattle in Miami, Manitoba. She's out at the Winter Fair this week with her 4-H club. All right, the time right now, 7:27. Paul McGowan has been very kind to us. I know we squished you, Paul. We have so much to cover when we're on remote. Thank you for waiting. All right, let's get to curling in morning sports. It's the final day of the round robin at the World's Men's Curling Championship.
And what a tournament it's been for Matt Dunston, because it felt after the weekend like things might go off the rails for him and Team Canada. Started 2-0 and then get picked apart last weekend, losing 8-3 and then 9-3. But Dunstone and Canada have run the table since then. 6 straight victories to sit second in the tournament standings. They have 2 more games today as they look to secure a spot in the semifinal.
Need to get a little bit of rest tonight for sure. We're going to finally get the sleep in, but there's nothing that we need to change. Just continue to get a good stranglehold on the ice and make as many shots as we can on it. We got to keep up the pace. I mean, we're still playing for that semifinal spot. We got to stick with Scotland, Sweden, and Switzerland as we go here. So every game's a big one for us from here on out. Great that we qualified, but you want to feel good about your game going into Friday.
Yeah, the standings are tight. Scotland, Switzerland, Canada are all at 8-2. Italy and the U.S. are at 7-3, and so Canada could still finish first above Sweden. They could finish as low as 6th in the 16 playoff. They get Germany and Norway today. The qualification games and semifinal go tomorrow.
Let's move to basketball. The up and down Raptors are back down again.
Well, after back-to-back wins over the weekend, the Raps on Tuesday had that big game against Detroit, and they lost that one, but you said, well, that's okay because they play Sacramento on Wednesday, the worst team in the Western Conference. Surely the Raptors can't lose that game. This clip of R.J. Barrett will tell you what happened.
We have a solid record, but it's nights like these where this is a game we're supposed to win no matter what, just straight up what it is. This one's pretty frustrating. We've been playing well. We've been fighting hard all year. So, you want to get the reward of fighting for a championship. So nights like tonight definitely hurt, but we got 6 more games. So I think over these next 6 games, we'll show and prove who we are.
Yeah, Toronto loses to Sacramento at home. They have now been bumped down into a play-in position in 7th spot in the East. So as RJ said, they need to find their game and quickly. That starts tomorrow night in Memphis.
All right, thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks, Marcy.
Well, we have a wonderful surprise for you. If you're just waking up and joining Information Radio, we're live in Brandon. Local painter Wai-Ming Zhao is painting live during the show. Started this morning, and you can see it on YouTube. Just gorgeous. He's doing a scene of Brandon over the Assiniboine and the beautiful skyline in the backdrop. You can win this. You have until 8 o'clock to enter. You have to tell us about where you think the most beautiful place is in Western Manitoba. Only enter by email, and that is win@cbc.ca. Good luck. Your CBC News from Manitoba is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:31. You're stepping out into a mild morning, -1 still in downtown Winnipeg. It's going to be a cloudy day. We're not going to warm up a whole lot. A high today of 2. For every 100 nurses hired into Manitoba's public health care system, the province lost 57. That is according to provincial numbers obtained by CBC News. The data looked at hiring figures for 13 months ending in May of last year. Sonia Udod is a nursing professor at the University of Manitoba. She says the focus historically is on training and hiring more nurses, but it should be elsewhere.
We're trying to recruit what we can to make the organizations look better, health authorities look better, and to calm people in the community that we do have enough people. But that's responding to a crisis. Where we need to be looking is at retention.
UDOT says the government promises like minimum nurse-to-patient ratios would help. Health Minister Uzoma Eseguera says the hiring breakdown represents a snapshot in time. The same data shows a net gain of 735 permanent nurses during this time period. Health Canada has slapped new terms and conditions on all of Grifols' paid plasma centres. That company has faced scrutiny after the recent deaths of 2 donors. Michelle Allen has the latest.
Multiple failed inspections, recurring systemic deficiencies. Now, new terms and conditions on their license to operate. Health Canada says they apply to all 16 Grifols paid plasma clinics in Canada. This comes after 2 people died in less than 4 months after giving their plasma at 2 different Grifols locations in Winnipeg. It also comes after Grifols' Canadian head office in Oakville failed its January inspection. The head office doesn't collect plasma, but oversees all 16 Canadian collection sites. Health Canada says Grifols didn't thoroughly investigate errors and accidents, that it didn't adequately screen donors, or have enough properly trained staff. So far, Health Canada says no link has been found between the deaths and plasma collection. Grifols did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Michelle Allen, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Manitoba government is paying a U.S. firm to help find emergency room doctors south of the border for temporary posts, largely in rural and northern communities. The province has teamed up with Utah-based Global Medical Staffing, which has put up 5 job postings in recent days. Shared Health did not reveal how much it's paying the American company, but Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says the amount is minimal. Asseguera says getting doctors to Manitoba temporarily could lead to permanent postings.
Perhaps these doctors will come here for a locum. Maybe they'll be in Russell, maybe they'll be in Brandon, and they'll fall in love with the community and they'll stay. We're doing everything that we can to make sure that rural Manitobans and folks living in the north have access to the health care that they need and that they deserve.
The NDP government promised a policy last year to favor Canadian companies for contracts, but it does allow for exceptions. The Canadian Centre for Child Protection says big tech giants have made it easier to target children. This as Winnipeg police warn sextortion cases are on the rise. Intimate images used to coerce or exploit victims by threatening to share them. The Canadian Centre for Child Protection says apps like Snapchat and Instagram were not built to prevent this kind of online exploitation. Lindsay Lobb works for the nonprofit group.
It is very easy to interact with people that you don't know. It is very easy to send private messages. It is very easy to send images. And all of these features that were built into these platforms were built in a way that children can be exploited by them.
Since the pandemic, Winnipeg police say sextortion cases have been growing dramatically, impacting children and adults alike. A Winnipeg business owner says a bus shelter outside his store has become unsafe and unusable. The shelter isn't maintained by the city, but by Astral Media, a subsidiary of Bell. David Newsom co-owns Hildegard's Bakery at Portage in Maryland. He says the shelter is often filled with garbage and drug paraphernalia and was recently damaged by fire.
The bench has a big hole melted into it, which makes it not very useful for sitting for transit users. And there's quite a few needles on the ground, which would make it much less attractive for me to want to wait here for a bus.
Winnipeg Transit says Astral is responsible for cleaning and maintenance at about 140 bus shelters across the city, and complaints submitted to 311 are forwarded to the company. CBC has reached out to Bell Media for comment. A long-awaited aquatic center in South Winnipeg is moving into the design phase. The city has issued a request for proposals to hire a consultant for this project. It's part of a growing recreation campus in Waverly West. Councillor Janice Luke says that facility could be a major investment.
My job is to go out and find the money once they figure out how much it's going to be. And like if you look in Thompson's building one, I think it's around $40 million. So I'm thinking between $40 and $60 million for this big pool.
The first phase of the South Winnipeg Recreation Campus includes a gym, fitness room, and child care space, but no pool. Lukes expects council will award the project, though, this month, with construction starting later this year. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, time right now is 7:36 a.m. I do believe, but in all the shuffle, I lost my clock. So here's hoping. Yeah, it's 7:36. That's good. My headphones broke. Live radio, folks. I got a new set. All good. Let's get into the forecast. I do have that for you, and so let's see what's going on here. We're live in Brandon this morning, so why don't we start there? We continue to broadcast from Forbidden Flavors here out on 18th, and out the window, I can tell you it's really cloudy. I'm not seeing a lot of fog here, but you may be encountering fog because that is in the forecast here. Chance of flurries this morning, risk of freezing drizzle. The high here is going to be 0. In Brandon tonight, mainly cloudy and a low down to -7. Tomorrow, our high is 1 degree here in Brandon. Also, let's look over at Winnipeg. Winnipeg's similar, actually. Cloudy day, a little bit of fog expected, high of 2 degrees. Tonight, partly cloudy, low -5. Tomorrow is mainly sunny and a high of 2 degrees, and a lot of folks will be off, of course, for Good Friday. And then in Thompson, up north, a mix of sun and cloud, winds up to about 15 km and a high right around 2 degrees as well. So finally, northern Manitoba catching up a little bit. Man, it was just freezing last week compared to the south, but now we all seem to be just above 0, and hopefully April's going to just be a little warmer for us than the end of March. We'll see how that goes. 22 minutes to 8 o'clock now. You are, as I mentioned, on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. And you might also be listening, of course, on 97.9 FM here in Brandon. Abby, we just got to check if there's traffic. It's been pretty quiet, eh?
Yeah, pretty quiet except for that fog on the out lane areas outside the city. You might want to take it easy out there. You'll notice animal crossing, deer crossing, so look out for deer while it's still foggy. You see anything, let us know. 788-3093.
All right. Thanks very much, Abby. If you are watching us on YouTube this morning, streaming live from Forbidden Flavors here in Brandon, you're going to see something that's unusual because it's not every day that someone is painting live here on the show, but we do have a local Brandon artist who's been doing that, and he has been painting since right around 6 this morning, and that's incredible when you see what he's accomplished already. His name is Wai-Ming Zhao. A lot of people in Brandon know him, and that's because he's been painting every day since 2003. He has over 7,000 plus paintings now of the city of Brandon and other spots as well, and what he's creating this morning, we're going to give away to someone. So, Corey, what have we asked people, and how are people responding to try to win this beautiful work of art?
We're asking people to email us at win@cbc.ca with the subject line Westman about the most beautiful place you think in Western Manitoba, and there's no shortage of places to choose from. We're getting lots of response from folks. Laura Frechette, she says the most beautiful place in Westman, it's impossible to choose, but she mentioned Souris with the swinging bridges and the peacocks, Brandon's Riverbank Discovery Center and Riding Mountain National Park, Lucky Break Ranch, Spruce Woods Desert Trails and Sand Dunes, Mendoza Beach. Oh, it's a long list. Other people saying Kian Kokolski, the most beautiful place in Western Manitoba is Riding Mountain National Park. Laura Rose says same thing, and she's actually seen Wai-Ming painting there at Riding Mountain National Park as well, and she says it's lovely, and it was amazing watching him do his work. And Bernard Cox here actually sent some pictures as well to us. He said, I started sailing here in Westman area 20 years ago and discovered the unbelievably beautiful area around Nanette. In fact, Mr. Zhao painted the area that I sail out of, the Pelican Yacht Club, and it came up for auction, but he didn't actually win it. So he's hoping to win this Wai-Ming's painting this time. So.
Okay, we usually do this off air, but let's just get this straight on air so listeners know we got to choose randomly because, yes. I mean, there's so many beautiful places. How are we possibly going to pick a winner? So.
Yes, so your best shot at being chosen randomly, you email us win@cbc.ca with the subject line Westman and tell us where you think the most beautiful place in Western Manitoba is, and you could win this beautiful painting by Wai-Ming Zhao.
You have till 8 o'clock to put in your email, and then yes, Corey and I will certainly take all the responses. We'll throw them into some kind of a hat or maybe a coffee cup here at Forbidden Flavors, and we will choose a winner at random. We'll announce the winner of the painting by the end of the show, and we'll check in with Wai-Ming as well. Just beautiful work. All right, well, let's stay talking about Brandon and stay talking about what's happening right across the street. We mentioned we can see the big Keystone Center. Today is a big day there. They're going to be having more different themes and different events going on. But I want to look ahead to Saturday because Saturday is Indigenous Celebration Day at the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair. They honor the culture, history, and contributions of Indigenous peoples in our province. Here in Brandon, embracing and fostering Indigenous culture is also prevalent at its 2 post-secondary institutions. Assiniboine Assiniboine College and Brandon University. At BU, there's a Native Studies program that teaches language, fine arts, and research. Some of the courses offered at Assiniboine are Indigenous-focused programs that reach more than a dozen First Nation communities. Michelle McDougall is one of two CBC reporters who calls Brandon home, and she is here now with a closer look at why Brandon is producing an ever-increasing number of post-secondary Indigenous grads. Hi, Michelle.
Good morning, Marcy.
Thanks for having us in your city.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks for coming.
So let's get into this story here. It sounds like the number of Indigenous students enrolled at both BU and Assiniboine is up. Do we know how that compares, though, if people are listening, like to the University of Manitoba and the University of Winnipeg?
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you look at all four of those schools, there's a steady increase in the number of Indigenous students in the last 5 to 10 years. When compared to the U of M and the U of W, BU and Assiniboine have the highest percentages of Indigenous students, and it's increasing every year. In fact, at BU, the Indigenous student population is their fastest growing demographic. And at Assiniboine, Michael Cameron, he's a dean. He's been with the college for more than 20 years, and he told me that he loves working with First Nations communities, and especially organizations like the Southern Chiefs and the Manitoba Métis Federation. He also said that it's those kinds of partnerships that has allowed them to expand into the communities. In fact, they have remote learning in 17 First Nations communities. He says they go to where the students are.
We believe that everybody has the right to post-secondary education. Indigenous people have the right to their own educational sovereignty, and the way that we can help deliver that through our commitment to reconciliation is to bring bring training to their communities.
Cameron also told me that the college hopes to be in more communities, up to 30 in the next few years,
Wow.
and that's part of their commitment to reconciliation. He's happy, yes, that the enrollment numbers are up, but he says the real joy to him comes when he sees the heartwarming moments when the students graduate.
We graduated 13 nurses from Norway House last year. All 13 of them graduated and stayed in the community to work. So when you train them locally, they tend to stay locally as well.
Which you often hear from community is so important, right? Yeah. So Assiniboine has plans to expand outside of the city of Brandon, I understand. Mm-hmm. What kind of support do Indigenous students, though, have on campus, like if they're going here in the city?
Yeah. Well, there is an Indigenous Affairs Department with 3 staff members, and they answer all kinds of questions that all students might have about housing, classes, and even budgeting. And within that department is Assiniboine's Cultural Center, is a gathering place for students. And that is where I met Sioux Valley's Catherine Davis. She's about to graduate from the hospitality business management, and she's been a peer mentor for about 2 years.
I gravitated towards it, and I kind of want the same for other students and students that are coming, especially from rural areas. It is, like Brandon is kind of a bit, I know I grew up here, but coming from a reserve and from everyone you knew, there's a lot to take in. And I always say, the cultural center is like my second home.
Do we know what kind of recruitment's going on, in and around Brandon, when it comes to getting Indigenous, high school students interested at going to college and university here?
Yeah, there definitely are. There are folks who work within the Brandon School Division, and they visit all 24 schools. That is where Raven Willoughby comes in. I met her. She's a specialist in Indigenous education. She thinks about some of the options and programs that could spark a student's interest.
Maybe in an Indigenous studies program or environmental studies or art, right? Or caregiving, right? Within the education department, within the nursing. All of those, I think, feel very comfortable and might come from their upbringings or from their communities that they see.
So let's talk about plans, if any, for either BU or Assiniboine to expand programs like those.
Yeah, there are. The head of marketing at Brandon University is Grant Hamilton, and he says they're bursting at the seams, and they plan to expand their Indigenous Peoples Center. It has cultural supports and a transition program. He says it helps students succeed. And then, meanwhile, back at Assiniboine.
Although our numbers are steadily going up, which is great, we do have a lot of work to do, but the more Indigenous communities, First Nation communities embrace their sovereignty, the more work we have for ourselves.
Yeah. So as we move forward, I guess we'll have to see what happens next with these institutions.
No, don't go anywhere because I have a personal question for you, but I want to promo what's coming up, not right next, but after 8 o'clock on the show, because we knew you were coming on to do this story and we wanted to build on it. So the president and CEO of Assiniboine College is going to be here live.
Yep,
so
Mark
that's after
Friesson.
8.
Yep.
Yes, that's right. And he's going to be talking about what's going on with, a number of things at the college, but he's also going to be talking about some of that community-based delivery and how proud they are of it, some of the remote learning you were referring to, Michelle. And he's going to build on a story we had on this week. So we were talking about, we heard from a Manitoba licensed practical nurse this week. She wants to bring awareness to barriers that involve upgrading to being a registered nurse.
Yeah.
So there's this program LPN to RN, and apparently they had this outreach in Brandon to see who's interested. And they had like 1,200 people show up. Yeah, the numbers were astonishing. So we're going to hear more about that.
Wow.
So that was Assiniboine College doing that check to see on the interest.
But both, sometimes people say we live in the shadow. Brandon lives in the shadow of beautiful Winnipeg, but we have our own, we're making a mark on our own and very proud of our BU in Assiniboine, that's for sure.
Second largest city in Manitoba. We are finally here. I can't tell you how many listeners are like, why aren't you coming to Brandon to broadcast? I'm pleased to be here. I want the personal question for you, just because obviously you're stationed here. This is where you call home. You're also one of two, you and Chelsea Kemp, reporters for CBC here. There's this awesome page now for the Western Bureau online, landing page for people to read your work. What do you love about Brandon? Like, what would tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, take off your reporter hat and put on your I live here hat.
Happy to.
Yeah.
Born and raised here. I don't know if you know that. And so I had a wonderful childhood here. It talked a little bit about the size of Brandon. To me, it's the perfect size. And it has a nice community feel to it, a small town feel to it. I was away for 20 plus years, but I always stayed connected, with a family here and attended family reunions, come home for Christmas and things like that. So I always followed the progress of the city, always fiercely proud of it, no matter where I live. So I like the community feel, and the size to me is perfect. I love the rural communities that come and support Brandon. So just everything about it to me is like a small town feel. I love our events, the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair, the Summer Fair, AgX and Ag Days. So yeah, and plus family. I've got a sister here and a brother in Killarney, a sister in Ninette. So, Sunday dinners aren't going to cook themselves for me. So
we're so grateful to have you on our CBC team.
It's wonderful.
And thank you very much for coming in with this story today.
Thank you for coming to Brandon.
Yeah, Michelle McDougall is one of, as I mentioned, two CBC reporters based here in Brandon. By the way, you can read more about her story and see more about her story on that landing page I mentioned. So you can check out links to cbc.ca/Manitoba. 11 minutes now to 8 o'clock. Well, coming up on the program, as you've been hearing in the news, Health Canada is cracking down on 16 Grifols paid plasma clinics in Canada after 2 people died in less than 4 months. Now, they gave plasma at different locations of Grifols in Winnipeg. Heather Wells has had that in the news, and we'll have more at the top. But the Manitoba Health Coalition has previously said an independent investigation into the deaths is needed. So we're going to get their reaction to the developments after 8. We are not having an independent investigation into deaths, but we, as I mentioned, have been reporting on some changes that Health Canada is going to be making Grifols go through. So we'll get them on live, the Manitoba Health Coalition, after 8 o'clock right here on CBC's Information Radio. Well, as we continue to talk about health stories, Manitoba continues to have the highest number of measles cases in this country. We saw 40 new cases between March 15th and 21st, according to Health Canada. As of March 21st, there are 392 cases so far this year. Health Minister Uzoma Asseguera says the province is not contemplating a mandatory vaccination order at this time, saying information about vaccines is much more effective.
The impacts of mandating on some folks has contributed to people really resisting vaccines altogether. That if you want people to buy into vaccines, they need the information, they need the education, and they need to feel like they can have the choice to do so.
So that was Manitoba's health minister speaking to reporters Tuesday. Our next guest says a number of studies do suggest that mandatory vaccination for measles does help reduce the number of cases. New Brunswick and Ontario are the only two provinces that mandate childhood vaccines. Dr. Gerald Evans is a professor of medicine in the Division of Infectious Diseases over at Queen's University and medical director of infection prevention and control at Kingston Health Sciences Centre. And with us now, good morning.
Good morning.
So what are your thoughts on what the health minister said, that the focus should be on education?
I think it's a bit of an idealistic viewpoint. I mean, there's no question that we know that it's certainly more acceptable for some elements of the population to just get the information and make the decision on their own. The challenge we have right now is we're living in an era with increasing vaccine hesitancy, and that's been propagated through social media and very much so by changes in health policies that exist in the country that's south of us. And that's influencing Canadians a great deal.
Of course, the real challenge, though, when you think about it, or I should say maybe the complication is some of the vaccine hesitancy also grew during COVID when people took exception to the mandates coming down hard. So what do health officials do about that?
Well, that's a real challenge because the COVID pandemic and the use of vaccine mandates actually touched on something that has nothing to do with health and a lot to do with ideological persuasions. There is an element of the population that does not like to be told what to do, and there's a thing called psychological reactance, actually, which is a pushback on anything that's mandated on you that you perceive to have as a freedom. And so the thing is that when we look at studies that have examined the impact of vaccine mandates, and there's been a number of good studies across a number of countries, particularly in Europe, where they were dealing with this hesitancy issue long before we have arrived at it during the pandemic, is they showed that mandates work, particularly for childhood immunizations. And I think the challenge that we have is that these decisions, albeit based on I think a great sort of ideal view that if you just talk to people, and it works, by the way, there's no question, people have a lot of confidence in their family physicians, the nurse practitioners that are taking care of them. But we're also in an era where primary care physicians and nurse practitioners are in short supply. So although it's a mechanism that works to talk to someone, get information, and make that decision on your own, we're challenged by the fact that the resources right now to be able to do that with a lot of people is really, really lacking.
It's interesting because across the street at the Winter Fair right now, just speaking of, this is an event that's going to draw, like in previous years, it's drawn 40 to 50,000 people. And obviously there were some concerns that were put out by our public health officers here in Manitoba about measles spreading, but they were just talking about because of the crowd size. But they have people on site and they're disseminating information. And they also, I believe, are offering shots on site, the mayor of Brandon was saying yesterday as well. So is that sort of... if you're not going to have a mandate, having information and the availability of a shot right there, do we know anything about whether or not that is something that helps with uptake?
Absolutely does. That's called a vaccine opportunity. And when you take advantage of the idea that somebody who might be saying, gee, I want to get my vaccine, I think I've got stuff, I'll get a little bit more information. Oh, I just don't have the time to see my family physician or do whatever. Those vaccine opportunities are important. So you go to that event and there's someone there and you say, yeah, I'm going to roll up my sleeve, I'm going to get my vaccine. That's actually a great thing to do. And my understanding is that in Manitoba recently, they've also expanded the use of or the giving of measles vaccine by pharmacists. And that's another way to try and improve the opportunities that people have to get vaccinated. Because sometimes that hesitancy is really an issue around how do you fit it in to the things that you want to do. Because sometimes people need that second shot. Not everybody has a second shot. If you were born between about 1970 and about 1985, you might have missed your second shot because we now know you need more than just that one shot of measles, mumps, rubella vaccine at age 1 year. So those are all good ways to get around it and to increase the portion of the population that's vaccinated, especially against a really highly contagious disease like measles. So I applaud those kinds of efforts, no question.
Having said that, though, you also said, in our conversation this morning that when you look at the research, it does show that mandates work. And then we're talking about, that hesitancy a lot of hesitancy can be also rooted in distrust. So for those that don't trust, how do you start to build trust with the medical community?
Well, I think all of the efforts that we have right now across the country to improve the accessibility and the availability of primary care by a family physician or a nurse practitioner is all part of that, because people develop relationships with their family doctors, with the physician that's going to take care of them from childhood onwards. And the lack of that, and having people like me, I'm a specialist. I see people that are referred to me, but that my opportunities to have those kinds of relationships with people is not the same as my colleagues who practice family medicine or primary care. So I think that's really the key, because that trust comes from established relationships that one has with your family doctor, because in essence, that sort of care helps to drive the trust issue to get people to do it. Other than that, we can try our best. Right now, it's a real challenging area because social media has really taken over, and in social media, there are all kinds of influencers and bots and everything else that really continue to propagate misinformation, and I would say sometimes disinformation about vaccines. And that's what's driving a wedge in the trust that people have had for public health and for medical care.
All right, Dr. Evans, thank you very much for your perspective and your knowledge and your time this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's Dr. Gerald Evans, professor of medicine in the division of infectious diseases at Queen's University and the medical director of infection prevention and control at Kingston Health Sciences Centre. It's 3 minutes to 8 o'clock now on CBC. I'll get into weather and traffic in a moment. Coming up after 8 o'clock as we continue live broadcasting from Brandon. This certainly is a post-secondary city. From Brandon U to the Fire College, as Manitobans call it, to Assiniboine College, there's a lot of people who come here to learn. We will hear more about the growing programs over at Assiniboine College when the president and CEO joins us after 8. Also, we have a follow to a story that's been in the news about Griffles. Right now, let's go to our news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, for every 100 nurses hired into Manitoba's public health care system, the province lost 57. That is according to provincial numbers obtained by CBC News. The data looked at hiring figures for 13 months, ending in May of last year. Sonia Udot, a nursing prof at the U of M, says the focus historically has been on training and hiring more nurses, but it should be elsewhere, she says, like in retention. And as Marcy mentioned there, Health Canada has now slapped new terms and conditions on all of Grifols' paid plasma centres. That company has faced scrutiny after the recent deaths of 2 donors. You can find the latest news on our website, of course, and I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather. Well, the Manitoba Health Coalition is going to weigh in on what Health Canada has said about Grifols now this morning. They had concerns previous to Health Canada speaking out about what they're looking for. So they'll join us live on the show after 8 o'clock. So stay with us. In Winnipeg, we're at -1. In Brandon here, it's -2. In Thompson, -12.
On Cue, Amanda Peet's new movie tackles some hard questions around aging and relevance in the arts, something that, as an actor in her 50s, she's been thinking a lot about. And she gets really candid about something we don't talk about very often on this show, pressure to get cosmetic surgery.
What exactly am I trying to accomplish by getting a facelift?
Cue with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, The Current with Matt Galloway.
Andrew McCarthy was a movie star in the 1980s. Now he is a writer, and he's traveling the United States speaking with men about friendships with other men, talking about why everyone from oil rig workers to record store owners often find those friendships difficult on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm John Northcott.
We are in this military operation, so powerful, so brilliant, against one of the most powerful countries for 32 days. And the country has been eviscerated.
U.S. President Donald Trump touting military wins in Iran, but providing few details on what the coming weeks of war will look like. In a primetime address last night, the president claimed the mission is nearly complete. But as Katie Nicholson reports, Trump's speech is inflaming critics who say there is still no clear endgame.
We are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly.
In his roughly 18-minute address, U.S. President Donald Trump tried to sell the American public on his military's wins in Iran. But Americans tuning in to find out the next steps as a third aircraft carrier and more military equipment and troops amass in the region got only this.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
No American is going to bed tonight with a more clear picture of what the end game is and when this is going to wrap up.
Democratic Representative Jason Crow, a former Army Ranger, is among many of the vocal congressional critics of this war since it began. He's also been worried by Trump's recent comments slamming NATO for not helping the U.S. in the Iranian war, especially as Trump again floated pulling the U.S. out of the decades-old treaty.
And then he goes to our allies and he says, why didn't you come and help us? Why aren't you coming to our aid? At the same time as he's actually maligning them and calling them names and threatening them.
The address came more than a month into a war which poll after poll has shown to be a deeply unpopular entanglement, still with no clear end. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Washington.
Global oil prices are surging this morning following Trump's primetime address. The cost of the benchmark Brent crude jumped 6% to over $107 a barrel after the president offered no clear timeline for reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Markets had hoped for a de-escalation, but instead, the president's promise of more extreme strikes is fueling fears of a prolonged supply crisis. Gasoline prices on the rise as the Iranian blockade continues to choke off a fifth of the world's oil supply. Canada's Finance Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, is meeting with business leaders today during his trade mission in Beijing. The goal, to find new Chinese investment and shore up relationships. Lisa Xing has the latest from Beijing.
At the Canadian Embassy in Beijing, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is greeted by Ambassador Jennifer May. Champagne here to make Canada's presence known in a massive country.
We think that our financial institutions, our insurance company, which are already present on the Chinese market, can help to further the objective that has been set by the Prime Minister.
These objectives increase exports to China by 50% by 2030 and get more Chinese investment in Canada. Part of a thaw in relations Prime Minister Mark Carney signaled when he met with President Xi Jinping in January. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem is traveling with the minister.
We talk about diversifying our trade. We need to do it.
To further that goal, Champagne and Macklem met with the heads of Canadian financial institutions who want to increase their presence in China, including CEO of Manulife, Phil Witherington.
We cannot be a global giant and depend only on 40 million customers, but by accessing mega economies such as China and India and the United States, we can be a global giant.
Tomorrow, the minister will meet with Chinese banks and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. Lisa Xing, CBC News, Beijing.
Health Canada is slapping new conditions on plasma donation company Grifols. We told you last month about a review of 2 deaths just 4 months apart at the company's locations in Winnipeg. Health Canada says it did a virtual inspection of Grifols' head office in Oakville, Ontario in January, and the company failed. Investigators say it wasn't accurately assessing a donor's suitability, did not thoroughly investigate errors and accidents, and didn't have enough properly trained staff. Grifols runs 16 plasma collection centers in Canada. They must now reduce their number of appointments so staff have the capacity to fully follow procedures. A Montreal-based private security firm is the winner of a contract to operate an ICE detention center in the U.S. GardaWorld received financing from the investment arm of the provincial government in 2022, and that's leading to calls for greater scrutiny over its activities outside Quebec. Ben Schingler reports.
It is just a massive empty warehouse.
Brent Peak is with Northwest Valley Indivisible, a citizens group in Arizona fighting plans to convert that warehouse in the town of Surprise into an ICE detention center. Last month, the American subsidiary of GardaWorld won the contract, worth more than $300 million US, to run a 1,500-bed facility providing services like medical care and processing detainees.
The idea of a company with the reputation of GardaWorld coming in here and being a part of that just makes it something even more unfit for this community.
Part of his concern comes from the company's work at what's known as Alligator Alcatraz in Florida, a state facility facing legal challenges for alleged human rights abuses. Garda World is not a defendant in those lawsuits, and there's no evidence of their involvement in alleged wrongdoing at Alligator Alcatraz. But corporate watchdogs in Canada say the contracts should get more scrutiny here after the Quebec government's investment arm gave $300 million in financing to the company in 2022. Karen Hamilton is director of Above Ground, a Canadian human rights and corporate accountability project.
I think that there are questions that need to be asked, and I think that they need to be asked both of Garda World and of the Quebec government.
A spokesperson for Quebec's economy minister says the financing came with conditions, including keeping the company's headquarters in Montreal, and that the deal is not tied to its U.S. operations. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security says its new converted warehouses will meet regular detention standards. Garda World said its U.S. subsidiary operates independently and always with respect for human rights. Ben Schingler, CBC News, Montreal.
Ottawa is offering a new guarantee to people applying for a Canadian passport. 30 days or it's free. The federal government says most passport applications are processed within 10 to 20 business days, and applicants will get a full refund of their fee if it takes more than 30 days. That doesn't include mailing time. The countdown starts when the government receives a complete application. Finally, the crew of NASA's Artemis 2 mission are on their way to the moon after a successful launch last night.
3, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Now, this is the first mission with a crew to the moon's vicinity since the Apollo program in 1972. Artemis 2 plans to surpass the Apollo mission's distance record and travel deeper into space than any human has gone before. Senior science reporter Nicole Mortellaro is tracking the Orion space capsule for us, and she joins us from Cape Canaveral, Florida. Nicole, you were working, but most of us were sleeping. What did we miss?
Well, a few things were going on. They were hard at work. They did a couple of engine burns that would take them on an elliptical orbit around Earth. So the orbit there'll be one that's farthest from Earth, and there'll be one that is closest to Earth. And that's basically what the engine burn does. It puts them in the correct orbit as they go around Earth. The one really cool thing that they also did was they separated from the ICPS, the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion System. And that basically is what gave them the extra power, the booster. And they had to do a demonstration test where the Orion capsule, now called Integrity, did a flip and then approached and backed away from that ICPS unit in order to test the maneuverability of the spacecraft. And that would have been done by Victor Glover. And so they've been hard at work.
Well, Nicole, what are we watching for now?
Now they are going to have a couple of naps in between. As you can imagine, it's been a long day for them, long few months. And now they're going to do a translunar injection burn, and that will put them on the path to go around the moon. And this is called a free trajectory return. So they basically put it into the correct orbit and gravity takes over and they slingshot around the moon and then they'll come back. But of course, along the way, they'll be doing a lot of tests and experiments and testing out the spacecraft, but also experiments that are being conducted on themselves.
CBC senior science reporter Nicole Mortellaro in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Thank you.
Thanks.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca, including a big feature article from Nicole about the launch of the Artemis 2 and a lot more for you on history being made up above us. cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
We're at the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair, and we are literally at the ground, dusty, sandy floor at the Keystone Centre. And I am sitting behind two horses, and they're pulling a whole wagon full of people behind us. And I'm talking to the man who's operating them.
My name is Ken Lodge.
Describe whose butts we're looking at.
This is Bernie over here.
Yeah.
And this is Red over here. This is a purebred Clyde, and this one's half Clyde and half Belgian.
What do you love about the rural life in Manitoba?
I don't know how to describe it. I love it. When I go to the city, I can't wait to get home. Just being close to the earth, I think. Only way I can describe it.
Wow. Well, we are experiencing that, a little bit of that rural life and also a little bit of urban life. That's the beauty of living in Brandon, right? We're 2 hours west of Winnipeg. We are broadcasting live in the city of Brandon this morning. We are at Forbidden Flavors on 18. We can see the Keystone Center right across the road here. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is our community studio this morning. You're on 89.3 FM, 97.9 FM in Brandon, and you might be watching on YouTube. Well, we've got a packed half hour on the show. We are going to give away a painting from one of the artists here who's been painting largely Brandon every day since 2003. Incredible, beautiful scenes. He's been painting live. We're also going to hear from Mark Frieson. He's the president and CEO of Assiniboine College. They've been growing and changing, and they've got some solutions to the healthcare challenges in Manitoba. So he's going to be joining us live on site as well. And I mentioned it's busy. We're going to try to meet some listeners here who have met us for coffee. So we're going to try to get them on. They're going to talk about why they love Brandon. And we have a follow on a very important news story this morning. Let's go to Heather Wells now for headlines.
Good morning. Well, the move by the provincial government to hire a U.S.-based firm to find American emergency room doctors is being welcomed by Doctors Manitoba. The provincial health minister says a one-year agreement has been signed with Utah-based Global Medical Staffing, and the goal is to recruit doctors for 6 to 12-month periods to staff rural emergency rooms in Manitoba. Dr. Nichelle Desolé at Doctors Manitoba says this is welcome, and bolstering ERs is just the start. We'll hear more from her. As well, in Flin Flon, wildfires cut their season short last year, but lacrosse team from Hapnock College Collegiate is raring to go in a brand new season. We'll hear about that in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get into briefly what the temperatures look like here in Winnipeg. See, look at muscle memory. Here in Brandon, it is cloudy outside, and it's -2. And over in Winnipeg, it is -1. It's also mostly cloudy. Up in Thompson, your current condition is -11. We're all around 2 degrees for the day. Traffic has certainly been quiet. Could be a little icy out there. Could, in fact, be a little foggy. You can call Abby still if you see a problem late in the drive here. It's 8:13 a.m. already on your Thursday, April 2nd. It might be quiet, of course, 'cause it's spring break, but you can give us a call, 788-3093, and we will pass along any issues. And now, this is my drum roll. That's all I got for you, tapping on the table here. Corey Funk is about to give away this gorgeous painting. Wei Ming, look at what you painted.
It really is beautiful, isn't it? So I'm here with Wei Ming Zhao, the painter, and he actually has painted this beautiful landscape of downtown Brandon. You can see in the background with the Assiniboine River in the foreground, a couple people fishing as well based on a picture he found. We have a contest going on. You asked you to email us, tell you the most beautiful places in Brandon, and we got a lot of love for Riding Mountain National Park. And what's funny, Wei Ming, is that we actually had a lot of people say that you are part of the landscape of Riding Mountain itself. They've seen you painting, and you often get a crowd that shows up for when you do paint. Well, what's that like, to not only be like, sharing your love of painting and these paintings go into the world, but people love watching you paint as well. What's that like?
Well, it's very exciting. I feel very good about that. It's kind of like you have such a connection to the location, right? Not just the landscape, but the human landscape. I mean, the people, the community. And over years, I thought I became part of the Riding Mountain National Park, habitat, almost like I'm part of that. I'm part of the landmark now.
And now in hindsight, I think I've seen you painting there as well, actually, right on Clear Lake there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I always go there every week for a day trip. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're in Riding Mountain this summer, any listeners, you'll probably see Wei Ming. Make sure to stop by and watch him paint because it is therapeutic. We'll be doing it throughout the show. And we are giving away this painting right here. And the lucky winner who emailed us is Allison Bardsley. And she gave love to the East Escarpment and the Bald Hill hike in Riding Mountain National Park. So congrats to you, Allison. And congrats and thanks to everyone who wrote in about their love for Western Manitoba. So many beautiful places. I've heard about Bald Hill, of course, Delta Beach, the Spine, which is private property, but that is in Brandon Hills. It does open up for a trail race in the fall every year, as well as Minnedosa in general, Bird Sanctuary just west of Melita, and the Turtles Back in Turtle Mountain. So thank you, everyone, for giving us your submissions, and congrats again to Allison. And thank you, Wei Ming, for painting this morning with us. It was beautiful.
Pleasure. But this painting is still wet, so the person will get a wet painting.
We'll let it dry before Alston gets it. Okay.
Take a week to dry. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for it to dry. Then we'll make sure it gets it.
Yeah. No problem.
Thank you. Back to you, Mars.
I cannot resist, but like Bob Ross has got nothing on you. This is unbelievable. 8:16. Please have a look. We'll post pictures a little later on my Facebook page. Well, let's get to that follow on the news of the day I mentioned. Noah Schultz is the provincial director of the nonprofit Manitoba Health Coalition. He is with us now via Zoom with reaction to what Heather's been had in the news all morning from our CBC Manitoba I-team. That's where the story originates. Health Canada is now cracking down on all Grifols paid plasma centres. That's 16 Grifols centres in Canada. 2 people died in less than 4 months after giving their plasma at 2 different Grifols locations in Winnipeg. Now, Health Canada says so far no link has been found between the deaths and plasma collections. However, Grifols failed its January inspections of the 16 locations. Health Canada says Grifols didn't thoroughly investigate errors and accidents. It didn't adequately screen donors or have enough properly trained staff. So that's reporting from our CBC I-team in Manitoba. We are going to talk to now my next guest, as mentioned, Noah Schultz, with reaction to this. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So you actually, well, I guess I shouldn't start by saying what you were hoping for. What is your reaction to this?
Well, you know, I think my first initial comment when I saw the update and then the new conditions, I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. I very quickly went from there to a little bit of frustration. You know, these changes, the conditions they're putting on, making sure there's enough qualified staff, those are conditions that should already be in place. These feel very reactive to me, that the decision to put these conditions and safety measures in coming only after these deaths and honestly after the reporting that drew attention to it. So I think it's too little too late. It falls short of what we really need to see, which is a ban on paid plasma and disclosure of the contract between Grifols and CBS. And to ultimately do all this to protect people's lives.
Now, while I respect that you're asking for a ban, I just want to offer a different perspective here, because when it comes to paid plasma, we know that Health Canada has said that to be able to meet the demand for plasma in this country, we just don't have enough collected in Canada, and that we need to collect plasma in other ways. We also have talked to various different experts, including Peter Jaworski, an ethics professor at Georgetown University and executive director at Georgetown Blood and Plasma Research Group, and he also expressed concerns about outright banning these kinds of collection centers. So if you did have an outright ban on centers like this, that wouldn't, you know, what would you possibly replace it with?
Well, we would replace it with the voluntary public system that we already have. We need to improve and expand CBS collection centers. We need to have national campaigns focusing on boosting our blood and plasma supply in Canada. We can do these things successfully if there is that political will, that investment, and we ensure that our public systems, including public blood collection, are well supported. I also really think it's important to highlight the fact that people do rely on these paid donations or harvesting for their income. And that's also something that I take very seriously as we call for this ban. I don't want people to die for Grifols' profits, to give more than is safe because they're financially incentivized, but I also don't want to leave people without necessary income because for public safety in general, we need to call for this ban. So there's a lot of considerations that, again, these regulations, these new conditions brought in by Health Canada don't speak to the core of those issues and protect the greatest harm. They're, again, bringing in conditions that should have already been in place too late in the game. But we do have to think about the plasma supply, the blood supply in our country, and of course, the people who rely on this process right now. We don't want to leave them behind either.
Meantime, how quickly do you want to see them implementing what they've said, you know, screening donors and properly training staff? What are your thoughts on that?
Again, this should be day one kind of conditions. My wife works in medical lab sciences herself, and I think about the high standards that they are rightly held to in public labs. And it's different than this particular end of things, but there is still a spectrum of care that you need, and we need properly trained staff in all areas of healthcare. And that's something that's missing when you have that profit motive, when you're always looking to cut corners to make more money. That's always going to be part of the private for-profit model, whether it's blood, plasma collection, or other areas of healthcare delivery. So again, these conditions are coming too late. They've already been too late to potentially save 2 people's lives. And any future deaths will certainly be on the hands of Grifols, and Health Canada has a responsibility to the Canadian public to have already ensured compliance and to have swift action for non-compliance, which we see a harmful pattern of non-compliance within Grifols. Really jaw-dropping stuff when you think about how important this process is for people.
Noah Schultz, thank you very much for reacting to the news. It was very much just developing yesterday and through the night, so we appreciate having you on live this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Noah Schultz, the provincial director of the nonprofit group, the Manitoba Health Coalition, with his perspective that despite what Health Canada has said, cracking down on Grifols this morning after our CBC Manitoba investigation led to some of these changes. Here, our I-team in Manitoba and their journalistic work suggesting that ideally for him, things like this should have already been in place, having properly screening and more trained staff, and that the answer for him is to properly improve our system of voluntary donation of plasma in this country. We'll have more on the Grifols story as it continues to develop throughout today. 8:22, you're on CBC. So Brandon University might be known for its School of Music. As we continue to broadcast here from Brandon, we've been hearing a lot about the wonderful things in the city. Manitoba Emergency Services College here in Brandon is where our firefighters and paramedics are trained, of course. My next guest, though, he says he wants people to think about Assiniboine College in Brandon, and they should know that it's a leader in community-based education with opportunities growing. We heard a bit about the remote learning last hour. Mark Frieson is president of Assiniboine College, chair of the steering committee also for Grow Brandon, and here to brag about the city and the college. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Good. So how much of a leader? You guys won an award for remote learning, right?
Yeah. So, we consider ourselves the national leader in community-based delivery, and we offer programs every year in 25 communities across Manitoba, full-time programs, face-to-face. And so we're actually having our plan that by 2030, we want to expand that to 30 communities a year. And that's really important for access. A lot of people talk about tuition fees, but the biggest barrier to access in Manitoba is geography.
Now, we have something else that you're also going to be expanding, you hope, I understand. And I hope we have this clip. I'm just going to check with Abby, and if we don't, we'll load it up. We've got it, Abby says, which I'm glad, because this comes from earlier in the week. So we're going to dip into this. This week on Information Radio, we had a Manitoba licensed practical nurse. She wants to bring awareness to the barriers to upgrade to being a registered nurse. Her name is Jenna Olson. Here's part of what she shared with us on CBC.
After Assiniboine College created the program, I think this was June 2024, we've already been waiting close to 2 years for government approval. And then the response that we get is a proposed start date of 2027. So for something that's already been developed, that timeline just feels long and uncertain, especially when there's a clear need for more nurses in the system.
So Jenna was talking to us this week about this online petition calling on the provincial government to follow through on this commitment to have this faster, more flexible LPN to RN program through your college. And this could also be, obviously, we're all looking for ways to improve healthcare. Tell me about this. You had I think it was a luncheon or an event to gauge interest in this. How many people showed up?
No, so I love her sense of urgency. Right?
Yeah.
That's great. But this is actually an election commitment that the premier made. Back in the election, he committed that we would offer some program that would help to bridge and put it in mandate letters to the Minister of Ed, Minister of Health as well. And so while there are always bureaucratic forces inside governments that try to slow these things down and move them in different ways, I've never thought that the program wouldn't happen. Premier's always been someone I've found that keeps his word. And so,
but you're still waiting.
Well, there was in the budget, there was an announcement that things would move forward.
Great.
And so, typically when we're solving labor problems in healthcare, there's been a doctor shortage my entire adult lifetime, right? Thinking about solving it as if you're going to solve it in 2 years. These are 30, 40-year problems that you're typically trying to solve.
Okay.
So, I appreciate her sense of urgency, and the quicker, a program gets in place, the quicker somebody like her can sign up for that. But, I think in general, the program is proceeding as one would expect.
Okay. So do you have a timeline, and how many people do you have that might be interested? Because I heard you had a luncheon here for interest. There were like 1,200 people that showed up. Which is great.
Well, we have an interest list is what it is. And the interest list has, over 1,200 people on the interest list. So lots of folks want to take the program. It's scheduled that we could start as early as January of 27. You do have to get through the government approvals, which is what we now have, but then you also have to get through the regulatory body approvals.
Yes.
So those things take time, and you can't really even do admissions until you get through that regulatory hurdle. So there are some legitimate things that one has to get through in order to make it happen.
But for people who are looking for this in Manitoba, it's hearing from you this morning that you feel that you're on track still.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly really looking forward to it. I mean, it's great that you'll have a program where the nurse never leaves to leave their job or their community in order to get the training they want, and that then doesn't exacerbate the existing shortage of nurses.
Yeah, you don't lose them while they're upgrading. So I want to stay with health initiatives at the college and kind of switch gears here. What are you doing in the areas of paramedicine that speaks to the challenges of rural healthcare specifically at Assiniboine College?
Yeah, certainly that's one of the things we've heard a lot from particularly municipal leaders across Westman over the last couple of years. They've been very concerned about the lack of paramedical professionals, and it wasn't a program that we typically offered, but government did ask us to get involved in more delivery of that, so we've agreed to that, and again, that was also part of this budget as well, that we'll begin to deliver remote types of training for paramedicine.
What kind of tech do you have that's making all of this remote learning so possible for you now that you're excited about?
It's not really a tech-related issue. Most of what we do in these communities, we do on the ground, hands-on, regular face-to-face programming. And that, I think, is part of the key to success, right, is that most people still have an appetite for that type of training.
In terms of another thing that I want to ask before we run out of time here, the Prairie Innovation Center. This is a huge one. Where are you at with this? It's one of the biggest initiatives that, we're watching for shovels in the ground. It's going to really add a lot here in Brandon.
Yeah, so, we've got great support from the community. It's the largest fundraising project in Western Manitoba history. The province has been excellent and has come to the table. Last May, the Premier announced that they'd provide $60 million in grant and $60 million in bridge financing to help make it happen. We went out to tender. The tenders were larger than the amount of money we had available. We are working with our construction manager and our architect to try to bring the cost down. But we're still awaiting the federal government to come to the table with an investment, and that's one of the key pieces, is getting the feds to make an investment in the project.
Thank you so much for being with us, Mark Friesen, to tell us about the success of the college here in Brandon.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's Mark Friesen, the president of Assiniboine College. We love having listeners on. I think Corey's going to talk to a couple right after the news. They've been waiting to say hello on CBC all morning. We just had a real busy one for us. I want to mention what Radio Noon's going to be doing today. Radio Noon today, the call-in is about Canada Post. So it is now official that Canada Post is putting an end to door-to-door delivery. So on the call-in, call in. What do you make of the move from the Crown Corporation? What concerns might you have about it or not? And how does it impact you here in Manitoba? So you can call or text Marjorie Dalhouse in the call-in between 12:30 and 1 on CBC's Radio Noon. Your news from Manitoba is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is cloudy. It's -1 right now. Feels mild when you step outside, but we won't warm up a whole lot today. A high of just 2. The move by the provincial government to hire a U.S. firm to find American ER doctors is being welcomed by Doctors Manitoba. The provincial health minister says a one-year agreement has been signed with Utah-based Global Medical Staffing. The goal is to recruit doctors for 6 to 12-month periods to staff rural emergency rooms. Dr. Nichelle Desilets heads up Doctors Manitoba and works in Neepawa.
Any help that we can get is appreciated. And this strategy that the Shared Health is currently taking with recruitment will be one part of the solution, but it's not going to be the blanket solution that we can hang our hat on.
Desilets says while bolstering the ER is a start, they also need to find more doctors for rural Manitoba in geriatrics, maternal medicine, and radiology. She says many of the doctors recruited recently have since gone to Winnipeg. For every 100 nurses hired into Manitoba's public healthcare system, the province lost 57. That is according to provincial numbers obtained by CBC News. The data looked at hiring figures for 13 months ending in May of last year. Sonia Udod is a nursing prof at the University of Manitoba. She says the focus historically is on training and hiring more nurses, but she says it should be elsewhere.
We're trying to recruit what we can to make the organizations look better, health authorities look better, and to calm people in the community that we do have enough people. But that's responding to a crisis. Where we need to be looking is at retention.
UDOT says the government promises like minimum nurse-to-patient ratios would help. A Winnipeg business owner says trying to get a bus shelter cleaned up outside his store often takes repeated complaints. The bus shelter is one of about 140 in Winnipeg, maintained by Astral Media under an advertising contract with the city. David Newsom co-owns Hildegard's Bakery on Portage Avenue. He says he has contacted the city multiple times about garbage, broken glass, and drug paraphernalia at the bus shelter outside his business.
If I am a squeaky enough wheel, yes, they're doing things, but that doesn't make me at all confident that Astral is doing a good job being sort of responsive or proactive in scheduled maintenance on the other bus shelters that they own.
Transit says it forwards complaints to Astral and is in constant communications. CBC News has also reached out to Astral's parent company, Bell Media, for comment. The Canadian Centre for Child Protection says changes in social media technology are contributing to a rise in sextortion cases. The centre says apps like Snapchat and Instagram have made it easier to interact with strangers. Lindsay Laub works with the nonprofit group and says this form of online sexual exploitation can have lasting consequences for children.
This certainly can impact their mental health. It can cause increases in anxiety and fear, a lack of feeling around safety. They become a little bit paranoid and scared when they're online. And so, and we're also seeing these manifest in other trauma symptoms.
The Canadian Centre for Child Protection is asking for stronger regulations on social media. Winnipeg police say extortion cases have spiked since the pandemic, mainly driven by sextortion. A long-awaited aquatic centre in South Winnipeg is moving into the design phase. The city's issued a request for proposals to hire a consultant. It is part of a growing recreation campus in Waverley West. Councillor Janice Luke says the facility could be a major investment.
My job is to go out and find the money once they figure out how much it's going to be. And if you look in Thompson's building one, I think it's around $40 million. So I'm thinking between $40 and $60 million for this big pool.
And this big pool, she says, will be like the Pan Am pool. The first phase of the South Winnipeg Recreation Campus includes a gym, fitness room, and childcare space, but no pool yet. Luke's expects council will award the contract this month, with construction starting later in the year. Well, wildfires cut their season short last year, but the lacrosse team from Hapnot Collegiate in Flin Flon is raring to go in a brand new season. Player Drayden Lowe lived in Denair Beach, Saskatchewan with his family. Their home was destroyed in the wildfires. He's happy to be back on the field again.
I'm looking forward to going as hard as I can for this season and leaving everything out on the field as much as I can, but I'm just going to have fun with my friends.
The club drives 8 hours to Winnipeg for all their games, and they will make the trip for the first time this season in early May. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Last minute's going to listeners in Brandon. They've been waiting all morning. They've been watching the show. Diane Sloan and Jill Andrewski, we literally have a minute. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Tell me what you love about living in Brandon.
We came to Brandon 8 years ago to join a seniors co-op.
Yeah.
And we had immediate community around us. And it's been very good.
You're going to regret saying that because that's a story. I love the seniors co-op stories. I got to hear all about that off air.
For sure.
How about you?
Yes, I'm Jill. I've been here since 1977.
Since 1977? Wow.
Yeah, so that's a long time.
Yeah.
And I love Brandon. It's such a wonderful city to raise a family. And there's everything here except a zoo. But, you know, we can do without it. We have the Keystone, right?
Yeah,
you know?
lots of animals over there for you.
There's so much here.
Yeah.
So much. It's a wonderful, wonderful place.
I love that you guys watched us on CBC all morning. Thank
yeah.
you for coming. Yeah. Thank you for coming. And
We're so
thank
glad
you
to be here.
And thank you, Brandon, for having us. On behalf of our entire team, I'm Marcy Marcusa. Big thanks to Andrea King here live at Forbidden Flavors on 18th. And thank you, Brandon, for having us the last 2 days. It's been wonderful visiting the Wheat City. And take care. Have a great long weekend.